Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to our Wednesday night here at the Sports Crib, home of the Sports Crib Network, and we're looking forward to a great conversation tonight with our guest, Miss Ann Montgomery. Ann, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. How are you, James, and everybody else?
Oh yeah, we got a bunch of young men here just waiting to ask you a bunch of questions, and
Lovely.
I'm going to, after I ask a few questions, I'm going to kind of get out of their way. But I was looking at, your very impressive credentials, and I'm thinking about the world of journalism, back when I was going to college as compared to today's uh, current, I guess, the way it's taught. Can you tell us a little bit about your idea of the evolution of journalism, where it's been and where it's going?
Yes, I grew up in a time where it mattered if you told the truth. It was like an important thing to do, and if you didn't tell the truth, you lost your job. So, when I was growing up, that's how you did it. You didn't go on the air with a piece of information unless three other sources corroborated that. Now people are in such a hurry to get it first, they don't care if it's correct. That bothers me. Also, on the other side of it, it bothers me that consumers of journalism don't seem to want to check their sources. You read an article and nobody bothers to say, hey, who are these people they've been interviewing? And I'm talking about journalism in general, not just sports journalism, of course. So
Right.
I taught journalism, and it drove me insane because nobody wants to check a source. And if your source, I mean, I've read stories where I went, this doesn't sound right. It took me 10, 15 seconds to find out the person that they talked to didn't exist. So it bothers me. I want truth. It's okay if you tell me that I'm wrong, prove me wrong. I'm happy with that. But I don't understand all this going with stuff that's not true, or being in such a hurry that you won't take the time to check things out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it seems to be, not whether you're telling the truth, but whether or not you're first.
Yep. And I don't know when that started. All I know is that I worked for 5 TV stations, 3 newspapers, and 3 magazines. And if I said something or published something that was incorrect, I was in deep crap. So I don't know what changed, and I don't know how these people keep their jobs, but it's frustrating to me. I'm still an avid consumer of the news. I read the newspaper, the old fashioned paper newspaper, every day. I watch the news every day, and I'm shaking my head half the time. I just don't know where this all fell apart.
Well, what about the effects of social media on journalism and the role of women in journalism?
Well, that's two different questions. The first one,
Yes.
it used to be we had media outlets that we pretty much trusted. Now anybody can say anything. They can be living in mommy's basement and they can say whatever they want, and then other people actually quote them without checking into it. That's a problem. As far as women in journalism, clearly there are a lot more women in journalism than when I started. There were almost none. I mean, when I first decided I wanted to be a sportscaster, it was ridiculous. There weren't any women sportscasters. It was 1972. There just weren't any. Now, are there more jobs for women in sports? There are, but are they real jobs? I mean, let's face it. What's the job? What is it? What job does the NFL give women? What's the most thankless job in sportscasting? It's sideline reporting. It's the dumbest job ever. They don't have to know anything about sports. Honestly, they should hire nurses. They should put a nurse on each sideline with a microphone, because all they say is, "Hey, Bob, I think he tore his ACL," and that's it. They don't ask them about or what's going on. So that is like the NFL's way of showing, aren't we great? We're giving women jobs. I'll be impressed when they put a woman in the booth, whether it's color, play by play. I don't care. There are women who are qualified to do that, but the NFL doesn't want to do that. Nor does baseball. And the only people that will do it are ones where women play those sports, like basketball. Not that strange to see a woman. But baseball, football, never. Women are playing hockey now. If I was growing up now, I'd play hockey. I was a figure skater, but I would play hockey. And they have women in the booth because women play those sports. But football and baseball that women don't play, they are simply not really interested in having women journalists. And let's face it, it still matters what you look like. I mean, look at the women on the sidelines. I mean, very few of them are not hot. And how that's still part of the package, I don't know. All I know is that I worked for 5 TV stations, and as soon as I was pushing 40, I wasn't pretty enough to be in front end of a camera anymore. And I don't think that's really changed.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your days at ESPN?
You sure you want to know?
I'm sure these gentlemen do, but you were one of the first women employed by ESPN. Am I correct?
That is correct. There were very few of us. It was almost entirely male-oriented place. That didn't bother me so much, but I've been very fortunate in my first 3 TV stations. I worked in Columbus, Georgia. I worked in Rochester, New York. I worked in Phoenix. That I had partners that were nice to me. And not everybody was nice. Some people were jerks, but most everybody was nice. But when I got to ESPN, it became very clear that they only had women there because they had to. I mean, if you have an entire newsroom full of men, that's really not equal opportunity kind of stuff. So they hired women because they had to. The problem was, you know, they didn't think we knew anything. And I'll give you a perfect example. Are any of you baseball fans? Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm live on the Sports Center set. And in a perfect world, we all got to see our highlights before we went on. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's a late game and we go on right after the game's over. So we have production assistants who are like 21-year-old kids right out of college who, you know, will do anything to work at ESPN. And they this kid did the highlights, and as I'm live on the set, he kind of slides the highlights to me. Light comes on, and the first shot, it says, "Oh, live from Wrigley Field. Oh, a fan gets hit with a foul tip in the front row." Now, what's wrong with that sentence? It's entirely wrong. Now, I couldn't fix it because I had to move on to the next highlight, but I knew it was wrong. Why? I was an umpire. Okay, I ended up being an umpire for 25 years. I did high school and men's leagues and those kind of things. So I knew that was a mistake. So at the end of Sports Center, when we get off the set, there's what's called a postmortem. And the postmortem is where we discuss what went well, what went badly, and what we need to do better the next time. So I'm sitting there and I said, "Okay, Bob," to the kid who was the PA. I said, "I need to explain about a fan getting hit with a foul tip." I said, "That's impossible." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, a foul ball is a ball that goes out of play. It's a dead ball. If I'm on second base, I got to go back. It's dead. But a foul tip is one that goes from the bat to the catcher's glove. He makes the catch. The umpire does that. It means, yes, it's a strike, but it's a live ball." 2 entirely different things. So I got somebody stealing home. I got to let him do that on a foul tip. So I explained that. There are 10 guys sitting there, and normally everybody makes comments. Nobody said a word. And then this kid, Bob, goes, "You're just being a picky bitch." And I said, "No, I'm an umpire. And somebody out there knows I'm an umpire and that I shouldn't make that kind of mistake. So I'm embarrassed." And he got up and he walked out. The next day I got called into my boss's office because I hurt Bob's feelings. And I had to apologize. Wow. And I'd like to tell you that was the only time things like that happened, but it's not. We had a guy there named Howie, and this was before we had, you know, the internet. It was just beginning. So Howie was this freak who knew everything about sports from the beginning of time. You could say, "Howie, when was the last time the Green Bay Packers won in the snow by 3 points in December?" And he'd go, "Oh, that would have been, let's see, January 73. I mean, he knew that. So everybody used him as a resource. So one night I asked him a question, He just happened to be going by. I never really paid much of attention to him before that, but he said, I was in a hurry. I said, Howie, I need some information. He gave it to me. I went on the air. I got called into my boss's office the next morning. And he said, why did you go on the air without information? I said, well, Howie gave it to me. And I turn around and Howie's leaning on the door jamb. He goes, I never told her anything. So now I can't use the guy that gives everybody information. This kind of thing happened over and over. It wasn't any fun at all. It really wasn't. And I wondered why did they hire me if they didn't think I knew what I was talking about? I don't understand. So yes, no fun at all.
What about Phoenix? You were employed in Phoenix for a while too.
Yes, I worked for Channel 10 here, which was I think NBC back then. They were great. I had a great boss. I was very fortunate. I mean, I got here just as the Arizona Cardinals showed up. I hate to admit I'm a Cardinals fan. It's heartbreaking half the time, all the time. It's terrible. But anyway, when they arrived here, I'm brand new in town. There are two guys who've been, in the sports department for years before me. And I was given the job as the Cardinals beat reporter. And that was a plum job. And I was shocked that he gave it to me. I was also shocked that my partners weren't upset about it. They wanted the job. And so there was never any inkling that they didn't believe I knew what I was talking about. And then I came back and I worked for the Phoenix Suns for a couple of years as their studio host. And I did a half-hour pregame, I did a halftime, and then I did a call-in show at the end. And they were great. I had no trouble with them. ESPN was really the one place that made me feel like I didn't belong at all.
Tell us a little bit about, you mentioned your coaching, coaching and umpiring. Tell us about your different backgrounds. See what baseball, hockey, is there anything that, maybe I should ask you, is there a sport that you don't coach?
Well, let me explain first why I became an official. When I got out of college with a degree in communications, I bet you know what that got me. Nothing. Nobody would talk to me. It was like 1977. I kept saying I wanted to be a sportscaster. It was so bad, my family had an intervention. They're like, what are you doing? We put you through college for this. We're so embarrassed. You're a waitress. I said, yes, I'm a waitress, but I'm also a referee. And it was accidental. I went to a Washington Capitals game one night. And I was with my aunt and her friend was with us, and he was an amateur ice hockey official, like, little kids. And he said, oh, we don't have enough officials. We don't know what to do. And my aunt said, oh, Annie skates. And I was an ice dancer, a terrible one, but I was one. And no talent whatsoever. And so I grew up on the ice, and she said, she can skate. Why don't you be a referee? And that happened. The only bad thing was that I'd never put hockey skates on in my life until the moment I was going to step on the ice with, have you ever seen little tiny kids hockey where their jerseys are down at their ankles and they're leaning on their little sawdust sticks, their little helmets are crooked, right? And I put on the hockey skates. I grew up in skates. I've been skating since I was 5. And I went out on the ice and I learned the number one difference between figure skates and hockey skates. Any of you know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
What's the difference?
Toe pick.
Toe picks. Okay. Yes. Lazy figure skaters like me use toe picks to get up and to land jumps. And so I went out, I leaned over to take my first face off and I fell and I couldn't get up. And I got 5-year-olds staring down at me. And I took 3 times I took a face off. I fell down each time. I think the 3rd time I stayed up. And I don't remember the rest of the game at all, but I do remember having an epiphany on the way home. I never was allowed to play all these sports because I was before Title IX. And the only way I could learn about the sports was to become an official in the 5 main team spectator sports: football, baseball, ice hockey, soccer, and basketball. And I figured if I read the rule books and I got certified and I did games, I would learn about the sports that I'd never played. And that somewhere there would be a forward-thinking news director who would go, oh, wow, she knows a lot about sports. I'll hire her. And I took 5 years. I worked in a bar in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. And they scheduled around all my games. I officiated year round. And my plan worked. I got hired in Columbus, Georgia, based on that background. But let me add one thing. I never quit officiating. I thought it was just a means to an end. But I did not retire from officiating. I called my last football game in 2019. So I officiated for 40 years. I'm very proud of the fact that the last 24 years I was a high school referee and crew chief. How many referees on a football field? Anybody? Come on, guys. How many?
One.
One. Thank you. You're like the third person who ever answered that right. They think they're all referees. Only the one with the white hat is the referee. You know, I have Holding 76. I was the referee. So I'm very proud of that. And I'll tell you, retired from teaching the same year. I miss officiating football more than I miss the classroom. Trust me. So yeah, I'm still a referee and an umpire, but I quit umpiring because honestly, I didn't want to ever get hit with another baseball. I mean, you ever go to a pro game and everybody's reaching for those line drives? I'm diving under the seat. Okay, I've been hit with too many baseballs.
Why do you think it is vital for our children to be involved in sports and hobbies?
Oh my goodness. We'll say sports, but I think the same thing about orchestra or marching band or whatever. As I taught in a Title I school for 20 years, most of my kids lived in abject poverty. Okay. I tried so hard to get them involved in sports. I explained to them that the things you learn when you play sports are the things that are important in business. Okay. Teamwork, leadership skills, how to be punctual, how to and I don't want to say produce a product, but work with others to produce something, a win or even a loss. Also, how to lose gracefully. I had a woman run up to me on a Pop Warner football field, and it was the first game her kid ever lost. She said, "My child's never lost a game." I said, "That's unfortunate, man, because that's the point. You don't always win in life." So when you play sports, you learn how to deal with winning and losing. Also, I have a great deal of admiration for the young people who go out, the kid that drops the pass that could have won the game, but they get up and they go to practice the next day and they try again. And those are some of the most important skills our young people can learn. Now, love sports, but I feel the same way about you're in theater, you're in music, what you're in debate, whatever, you got to participate in things. And that's going to make you more marketable in the business world. These are the skills we need to succeed in business.
Now, why do you think the sports world is in trouble?
Oh my goodness. I think there's a lot of problems. First of all, I started teaching in 2000, and this was the beginning of every kid having a cell phone and kids being addicted to video games. I mean, it broke my heart. I begged kids to get involved with things at school. And I said, "Honey, what do you do after school?" And they said, "Oh, I go home and play video games till 3 a.m. This was common. And they have no social skills because they're not used to looking at another human being in the eye. And I have a son who was into video games for a long time. And I'm like, "Honey, I need you to go out and meet actual people." They have no ability to communicate. They don't look people in the eye. I actually taught kids how to shake hands. Yep. Because none of them seem to know how to do that. Or, when I would interview them and talk to them about their lives and say, "What do you want in 10 years? What do you want your life to look like? Let me help you chart that course." And they wouldn't look at me. And I'm like, these are important skills. And I think when you spend your life looking at a computer or a phone, you're missing out. So a lot of kids do not want to get up off the couch anymore. I know in my school we had 2,000 kids, and I think the same 100 kids played every sport and were involved in every extracurricular activity. And a lot of the other kids just went home and hung out, on their phones. And that's heartbreaking to me. The other problem is we have a horrible issue with obesity with children because they're not going out and getting exercise. They have horrible diets. And, I don't know what we're going to do about that. I can't imagine the medical system 30 years from now with kids that just, I'm guessing most of you guys played sports and you didn't go home and sit on the couch. You went home and changed into clothes where you could run out and go do physical things. Kids aren't doing that anymore. And I don't know how to fix that. The other problem with amateur sports is the lack of officials. And clearly I understand this part. Officiating is extremely hard. Because let's face it, half the people hate us half the time. Also, what jobs besides a brain surgeon, maybe an air traffic controller, they have to make a decision instantly, but most jobs don't. Most people can go, hey, I'll get back to you after lunch on that. But for an official, it's right now. I get one shot. I don't have 9 cameras. Let's face it, you watch the NFL, and sometimes all 9 cameras can't tell you if the guy reached the line to game. Yet people slam us for it. So in my time, yes, it was bad. I had, police escort me to my car. I've had my tires knifed. I've been spit on, all that kind of thing, called bad things. But the problem now is if I make if I make a bad call on a Friday night, it's now all over the internet with my name. And, for those of us who have been officiating for a long, long time, we have pretty thick skin. So we're used to the crap. But you get millennials in there, the kids who everybody got a trophy and nobody ever, they can't take criticism. They don't last. 50% of officials leave within the first 3 years. So some of you may have kids or grandkids who play sports. I don't know if you've been to a field where not enough officials have shown up, but this is happening every single day all across the country.
Yeah.
I ended up working way too many games with shorthanded crew. Nobody appreciated that. Coaches would scream and yell. I'm like, Coach, we don't even have enough guys out here. How can I see? So, go ahead.
That's actually just Donald's camera there. Or I mean, microphone.
So I think the problem of not having enough officials is going to kill sports. And people don't only care about us if we don't show up. They really don't care about us any other way. And we can't retain officials. We can't recruit officials. It's a constant problem. And let's face it too, recently there's been, or the last 15 years or so, young officials can dream about being in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL, but those jobs are going to go away. I think AI baseball is going to go first. I don't think they're going to be in 10 years major league umpires. I think it's all going to be electronic, and probably most of the other sports will go the same way. So how do you get young people to want to come into a very difficult business when there's no end game for them? There's no $250,000 job at the end of it. So I don't know what we're going to do. And then you have parents who are so terrified that their kid's going to get an injury. Well, you can get injured stepping off the corner, crossing the street. I think the benefits of sports are worth it. Now head trauma, that's a big problem. In my world, no one listens to me, but I think we take all the helmets off all football players. And then they won't use their heads as weapons. And I mean, look at rugby players. You don't see rugby players with spinal cord injuries because they don't have gear on. And you put kids in all that gear and they think they're invincible. So, parents are all worried about kids getting hurt, but I think we have to figure out some way to let them play.
Well, and my only problem is that we don't have enough time. I want to get you back on the show.
I'd be happy to.
But I know the guys have a bunch of questions here, so I'm going to start with our coach and resident teacher and official there, Mr. Don Hayes. Don, do you have any questions or things that you'd like to observations for Mr. Montgomery? You're muted.
You're muted.
Still on mute. Yeah, okay.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So y'all have to forgive me. I had to switch computers. The computer in my man cave is not working, so I'm in the office now. So that's where I'm at. No, I just thought that was a good take on how you think that AI will be eventually doing baseball games.
Yes. Well, they already are.
Well, yeah, but I was thinking like tennis matches.
Yeah, they'll do it there too. We've got a reverb. I don't know what's happening.
Not sure who that is.
Yeah, there's an echo. Yeah, there's an echo.
Is it on my end?
It is. It is.
Yep.
I'm not very technological, so.
I think all it's doing it.
Y'all discuss. I'm going to try to figure this out.
Yeah, you gotta turn the volume down. That way your mic doesn't.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, still doing it.
Okay. Well, we'll let Don figure out that. Bo, Dave, who wants to go here?
I have a question. It's a sensitive topic, but it's a big topic. And first of all, Ann, I really enjoyed your presentation. Very, very interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I like your references to rugby. There are spinal cord injuries, but usually not from tackling. It comes from the front rows and the scrums, and what they did is they changed the rules.
Right.
It's so rare,
they've greatly reduced. It's very rare now. It used to be much more common, but because of the rule changes with the front rows, where they used to crash together, now they come together. But very, very interesting. But my question is what is your view of transgender athletes in women's sports?
Okay. I think what we do here in Arizona is it's a case-by-case situation. So in my mind, if you are a 20-year-old guy and you decide to change to a woman, you've already been through male puberty. And I don't think that part's fair. But here we had an 11-year-old girl and her 15-year-old sister. And they wanted to play, I think they wanted to play boys sports. They had not gone through puberty. They were, and at that stage, the girls are stronger than the boys, So I believe that if they're kids and they haven't, developed muscle tone of a male, that I think you let them do that. I think it's important for all kids to participate. I understand it's a sticky situation, but I can't remember the name of the swimmer who.
Leah Thomas.
Yeah, I don't think that was right, simply because he had gone through male puberty. I think every kid needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. And if there's clearly no advantage to be gained, then you let them play.
All right, thank you. And just for your info, in Maryland, like with wrestling, in at least in Montgomery County, but I think it's the whole state, the men's wrestling is considered co-ed.
Yeah, we have that here.
So a woman can wrestle on the men's team, but then they have women's wrestling that's just for women. So it's kind of a one-way street, because the men's wrestling is considered a higher caliber. And they have some great women wrestlers from Maryland, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like football. There aren't girls football teams. Now we do have girls flag. We just started. That's a varsity sport. But I have, over my 40 years, run into girls who have played on the varsity football team with the guys. Yes, they should be allowed to play. Schools can't field, full teams of girls that want to play. So yes, they've let them play for years. Why shouldn't they? I don't think anybody noticed that for so long. We have young ladies who play on boys baseball teams. Why not? Who are they hurting?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want kids to have every possible opportunity, as long as it's fair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill.
Yeah, I've been very lucky in that I've gotten a chance to know Amy Trask and interviewed her.
Don, you turn your volume down.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was saying that I've been very lucky and that I've gotten a chance to know Amy Trask, who, of course, broke a glass ceiling with the Raiders when she became a front office executive, working with Al Davis back in the late 1980s. Can you mute your speaker? Part of the 1990s. I've been very lucky in that I got to know Connie Carberg, who broke the glass ceiling in scouting, became a scout with the Jets. and Jen Welter,
Microphone.
doctor slash
Keep that
coach
off
Jen
on
Welter.
it.
Oh, someone's coaching Don. It sounds like Don's being coachable. That's always good to see. Good job. But I've gotten a chance to know some of the very courageous and very important pioneers. Did you get a chance to know any or meet people like Jane Chastain? Or did you get a chance to know people like Jessica Mendoza? You talked about a woman in the booth in baseball. Jessica Mendoza broke that particular line a few years back. And I'm as a kid, I remember watching with great intent, particularly Jane Kennedy, but that's something different. But I do remember watching also with great intent. Hey, I was developing and growing. But I also remember watching with great intent, sort of the slow, gradual process. One last fun fact. My father was an instructor at the University of North Carolina when the first sideline reporter was literally born. Jim Lampley created the position for himself while he was still a student. In fact, he never graduated, come to think of it, because the money. But he was a junior, I believe, at University of North Carolina when he invented sideline reporting. So the first was actually a man. It was him, and my dad taught him English 203 at University of North Carolina. But have you had a chance to meet some of the other pioneers in your industry who are women?
No, I really haven't. I mean, it was so early when I was national. I mean, there really weren't any other women around. Gail Gardner had been at ESPN shortly before I was, but most of the couple of women that were there before me were there and gone very quickly. They didn't hold on to anybody. So I really have never met another woman sportscaster. I've seen them, but I haven't met any.
Well, I think in '74, Jane Chastain worked with Don Criqui and Irv Cross on in fact,
yes.
October. Okay, you know about this. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there have been a handful. And obviously on the desk, you had, First Lady of the great state of Kentucky, along with Jane Kennedy, sort of broke at least on the desk. And then slowly but surely you saw, but it was so hard, right? As you know, I mean,
they were hiring the women they were hiring was like Phyllis George, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
She was Miss America.
Right. In 71, yeah.
Why did they hire her? She was Miss America,
right.
Not because she knew the difference between a foul ball and a foul tip. Right. So it's frustrating for me looking back, because the original women sportscasters, at least in my mind, were eye candy.
Well, Donna DeVerona sure heck was nice.
No, Donna, yeah, she was, and she was a swimmer, and yep. It's different. If you're an Olympic athlete and you have an Olympic gold medal and you're covering the sport that you participated in, those were the first women sportscasters.
Right.
Or even, you were an ice skater and you covered ice skating. I get that. But when I think sportscaster, I'm talking about football, baseball, ice hockey, soccer, and basketball. I'm talking about men's sports. Right. The popular men's sports that make the money, and not that every 4 years every 2 years now we have the Olympics.
Yeah.
So
here in Chicago, we had Jeannie Morris. I don't know if did you ever meet her?
No, I haven't met any of them. You have to understand, there just weren't that many of us. I was always the only woman in the press box. I was always the only woman in the locker room. I'm old.
Right. I mean, but I'm talking about women who predate you. I'm talking about, unfortunately, Jeannie Morris passed away a few years ago at 85. But I'm sort of I've taught broadcast history, so I'm a bit of a historian. But there have been a sprinkling of them since the 60s. But you're right, it's never.
But they were writers. Most of them were sports writers.
I'm talking about television. I'm talking about television people. I'm not talking about sports writers. Everyone I've mentioned so far has been television.
Okay, then they were local. I don't remember them nationally, but maybe I was too young to notice.
National stuff for CBS in the 70s, 74. She started working with Criqui and Irv Cross. She was sort of like a fill-in, but she was doing national. She didn't get the A games, right? She would get the A games. Went to Brookshire and
still getting you, Don.
Brookshire and come on, Pat Summerall got the A games, but she would be like the B games with Don Criqui and Irv Cross.
Well,
that was October 13th of 74 was the first time she went on with them.
Okay.
Well, Bo, do you have a few comments or?
Yeah. I got a question for you. So, you're seeing the evolution of sports as it goes right now. And you're seeing a drop in kids getting into reffing, into playing in general, really just into watching the game at all. And so I guess my question is, are we in the height of sports viewership, and are we going to see it really start to tail off here in the near future as these younger kids become the main demo and they don't watch a lot of sports anymore?
No, absolutely. I agree with what you said. I think sports are in trouble. And the reason is that kids don't have the attention span. I think I read once a goldfish has a 9-second attention span, while a teenager has a 7-second attention span. All of the sports are panicking. You can see them playing, especially with the time limits that we've got. Now we've got a pitch clock. Why are they doing that? Young people are not going to sit through a 3-hour baseball game. They're not. They are, and if they do it, they're on their phones. So all games are too long. The season's baseball's absurdly. I mean, the season is too long, and no one appreciates. Young people do not appreciate a 1-0 baseball game. They're bored. They need a 15-12 game, which to me is horrid. Okay, same way in hockey. A 1-0 game is great in hockey, but young fans, they only care about scoring. That's why we had balls juiced a few years ago. That's why something like Red Zone is popular. Who wants to watch just the scores? Where's all the buildup to the scoring? Young people don't want to do this, and the leagues are terrified because if you don't, first of all, you don't get kids playing, you're not going to get kids interested. And if you've got games that go on forever, they're not going to watch. And then conversely, you have the NFL cracks me up because they realized a few years back that the people buying all their products, all their hats and their gear were women. The women are buying them for their husbands or their kids or whatever. And so they suddenly realized they had to start appealing to women. That's why you see all these ads for like girls playing flag football and moms being in the commercials, because they're the ones spending the money. And it cracks me up because you guys know 10, 12 years ago, when you watched the Cowboys game, how many shots of the Cowboy cheerleaders were there? Oh, I don't know, 50. Now there's like 2. Because they realize that's offensive to women. Now, I wouldn't mind if they gave me some hot guys in shorts out there dancing around. That would be fine, but they don't. So now you rarely see a cheerleader, and now you even see them like wearing more clothes than they used to because they don't want to offend the women who are shelling out the money for the NFL gear. So I know I got off your point there a little bit, but they're changing games to keep people watching. And I think they're all in trouble. And baseball was brilliant with a pitch clock because they've cut 20 minutes, 25 minutes off the game. That's beautiful. As an umpire, I would have loved that. But they're not doing that for us. We can watch a game because we love the games. But to keep young people involved, especially if they haven't grown up playing the games, I think a lot of sports are in trouble.
Yeah, to your point, they've definitely changed cheerleaders in general, just because, I'm a Seahawks fan, and they did away with the Seagulls altogether, and now it is a co-ed dance team.
Because the NFL isn't stupid. They're like, we're offending women because we're watching boobs, right? So the bottom line is, I think that they might have caught on to that a little late, but suddenly, if you see 2 shots of cheerleaders in any game, that's a lot. And you remember how it used to be. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were the hottest thing on the planet. Now you don't pay too much attention, and that's intentional. The NFL is trying to, bring in as much money as it can. They don't want to annoy the ones opening the pocketbook.
Yeah, that is one area that the NFL has an advantage over the other sports, is it is such a short season that every game truly matters. You can go on a 10-game losing streak in baseball. You can still be in the playoffs. I mean, that ultimately doesn't necessarily. I mean, the Mariners, they made it to the playoffs. They didn't play baseball in April.
Yeah, it's 182 games is absurd. Yep. And on top of that, it's hard on the players. And it's all about money. I get that, but to me, that season is too long. And conversely, I am so sick of we've got Monday night football, Thursday night football. And that's a horrible thing to do to players. These guys, I haven't looked into it, but I bet statistically there's so many more injuries now because you got guys playing on Sunday and then having to play on Thursday and then playing the next. It's crazy. So this is all money grabs. And, I'd rather go back to just watching games on Sunday, and I'll live with Monday Night Football, but it seems to me pretty soon we're going to have football every night.
Yeah. I mean, if the NFL could do it, they would probably try it, right? Protect the brand and try and get as many in primetime slots.
Right. And the players are just meat. They're just meat. They don't care. People think it's so glamorous. I was engaged to an NFL player for 5 years, and there's nothing glamorous about it. Monday mornings suck. You got men in their 20s who can't get out of bed.
Yep.
And people think, oh, they shouldn't be getting all that money. I'm like, why? NFL players die on average 20 years earlier than average males. 20 years. What's worth 20 years of your life?
Yep.
And if the NFL can pay them $250 million over 5 years, they can afford to pay twice that. What?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
2000, the average NFL team was worth like what? $365 million. Now the lowest ranked team is worth $4 billion.
People
And the
thought
Dallas
Jerry
Cowboys
Jones,
were worth $9.2 billion.
right? People thought
Okay.
Jerry Jones
So they
was
can
crazy.
pay players.
Oh,
And the team has gone up in value 23 times.
I know that my pathetic Cardinals, they're horrible. That they're worth $5 or $6 billion is ridiculous. So honestly, I'm all about players getting everything they can. I had students who would go, I'm going to be in the NFL. I said, well, that's great, honey, but the average career is 3.6 years. You're going to be retired at 26. What are you going to do then? Because they all think this is like they can play forever, but you can't, at any given day. Aaron Rodgers, any given day, it's over. I'd be surprised if he came back. I would, but that's just me.
Sure. I'm with you there. And it's funny because how short the career is. Most of those kids don't realize you're not even off your rookie deal. So you haven't made any money, real money yet anyway.
No. And I'm surprised the NFL gets away with that, quite honestly. But I also, if they don't do that, then the veterans don't get paid well. And you got young up and coming kids who are getting paid tons more than the guys that are out there in the trenches, year in and year out. So I know it's not easy dealing with the money, but I'm all about players getting whatever they can, because if you've been playing football since you were 5 in Pop Warner and now you're 22, you're going to die early. You are. And I know rules have changed. We don't have a lot of tackle in the off season. There's all kinds of rules about that in high school and college. But, I love football. I have 3 sons. None of them played football. And if they'd wanted to, I would question it now. I would say, honey, you want to play football? I don't want you playing until 9th grade. I don't want you. Or you got a kid who's playing baseball. I wouldn't let my kid pitch until 9th grade. I'm not having some kid pitching at 10. We've got children getting Tommy John surgery preventatively at like 13. That's child abuse, So I think I don't know what's going to happen with all this. I look at
one thing, Ann, with the line in football, I think one thing that's helping is some of the football players are making smarter choices once they finish playing. So, like for example, Pittsburgh Steeler Casey Hampton, big snack. He was like 340 pounds, huge guy. He's a shadow of what he was. He's little snack now. And so a lot of these players are losing weight, slimming down. And I think that doesn't address the CTE issues and that type of stuff. But those healthy choices, I think, will start to help extend those lifespans.
But David, don't you think that the damage is kind of done? I mean, when to be 320 pounds. A man I was dating was 6'6". When I met him, he weighed 265, and he got the crap beat out of him. A first-round draft pick, got the crap beat out of him, and coaches took him aside, and in 4 months, he weighed 305. How do you think that happened? Needles.
I know.
I know exactly how it happened. I was kind of ignorant about it back then, but I know exactly what happened. They stuck him full of steroids. He will die young because of that damage.
Yeah, and that's they do have the drug testing, which includes the human growth hormones, but they mask it. I mean,
Yeah,
and I
they
understand
warn
that.
them. They know ahead of time. So I mean, and then there are drugs we don't even know about, and that's
Right.
what bothers me. And we know it's out there, we know it's happening, and we know it's going to kill them eventually, and it's going to ruin their family lives. Okay, I didn't marry him because of violence. Okay, because someone who's getting shot up with steroids is insane.
Right.
I'm lucky I'm alive. So I'm just saying, if this is a horrible thing, and I've seen high school kids that I knew were on steroids. High school kids, 300-pound linemen in high school that aren't fat, who are hopping around like they're crazy. I'm like, I knew exactly what was happening, but I had no control over it. And that coaches promote that in high school. So they don't understand what they're doing to themselves. And I think there's still a whole epidemic of it. And every time they take a drug and we find that drug and we make it so we can find that drug, they're on a different one. And so, yeah, it's problematic, and they're cutting their lives short.
When I was on the wrestling team in college at Norfolk State University, one of the few women that was in the weight room a lot was a young woman who was the cousin of Doc Gooden. And when Dwight Gooden came to Tidewater, it was the Tidewater Tides, he sort of brought a bunch of his cousins with him, right? His family is very well known in the Tampa area. He's also a cousin of Gary Sheffield. They're all related. He has a bunch of relatives, played a bunch of different sports. They dominated Tampa area sports for years, various members of that family. And one of his cousins was a bodybuilder. And I remember the first time I met her, she was extremely hostile, right? Like super mean, so we all just stayed away from her. And she kind of had the weight room to herself. So she ran off an entire room full of wrestlers, left her alone with the weight room. The next time I met her, she was a completely different person. And I asked her, like, you don't mind me asking, like, you're completely, she said, yeah, I was in my cycle then. Like bodybuilders don't, they're not in bulking season all year round, right? They go through periods where they're like building up and then slimming down, building up, slimming down to get the cuts, to get the striations and everything. So she said, yeah, I'm off. She was on Dianabol, I think. I'm off now. She said, like, I'm sorry if you met me when I was on, like that's a different person. And now they're 14 generations away from what she was taking, right? Because every year, the cops are always ahead of the criminals when it comes to this stuff. Some, Latvian genius or whatever has come up with what the next thing will be. I wrote a story one time about the revolution in that. You may know this already. So the same East German doctors that were responsible for like Gertrude Ederle and all that bunch in the 72 Olympics came to America shortly thereafter. And who did they speak to? Strength and conditioning coaches in the NFL. So two teams in particular embraced the new technology, the San Diego Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And I think you want to throw the Washington Redskins in there too.
They were a couple years behind. Were a couple years behind. But the first two to really embrace it were the Chargers and the Steelers. They were also a couple of full teams and the Raiders also had Marv Marinovich, who was, of course, the father of Tom Marinovich. They were the first teams to even have strength and conditioning coaches. Believe it or not, this is crazy as it sounds. In the early 1970s, most NFL football teams did not have a strength and conditioning coach. They had an offensive line coach who had messed around with weights, that kind of thing, right? And it wasn't until the early 1970s that they suddenly began to get interested. And like I said, the Raiders first with Marv Marinovich, and then shortly thereafter, I can't remember the name of the Steelers coach anymore, but the Chargers and the Steelers then next, and then yes, a little later Washington, but Washington was a couple years behind, about 3 years later to the party. Had full strength and conditioning staffs and multiple coaches from 0 to like 3 or 4 pretty quickly. And then, they were all experimenting with like stanozol and whatever the hot new thing was.
Where you going with this, Bill? We want to get Miss Montgomery out of here.
I'm landing the plane now, James.
Okay.
So you mentioned the concerns that parents legitimately have. And I had a concerned parent at one point. And of course, you could look at my body at any point and say, oh, he's clearly not on steroids. But I used to look at other weird stuff. Like I would buy things at the GNC or whatever. When kids today, and as you said, most of them aren't playing sports, but there are still kids who can be bigger and stronger. When you are looking now at the kids you saw who are huge.
Hey, we're having the same problem with the mic.
I
I don't know where that's coming from now.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, okay. So, but I'm saying there's kids experimenting with whatever now. When you speak to kids about sports and about the long-term things that they aren't thinking about, because kids can't think long-term, what do you tell them about the benefits, as you said, that you think outweigh the dangers, but things that they can do that unfortunately can affect them long-term for 20, 30, 40 years down the road?
But no matter what you say to kids, especially teenagers, they can't fathom beyond Friday night. They don't. When I say, look, if you do these things in 20 years, this may happen. They can't even relate to any of that. And maybe we were the same way. I don't know. But the idea that they want to be famous athletes, and they will do anything to get there. And the other thing is they want their coaches to love them. They want to do whatever the coach says. And if you have some unscrupulous coach who is, pushing that kind of thing, I'd like to think that's not happening anymore. I don't know. But kids will do whatever the coach tells them to do. And or most likely it's not the head coach. It's, somebody further down the coaching chain. But I don't know what you do. I really don't. Kids think, remember when you were 18 and you knew everything, and then you turned 40 and you knew nothing? Somehow but at 18, they've got all the answers. And no matter how much you say, you shouldn't be doing this, don't take that supplement off the shelf. You don't know what it is. It's not controlled by the government. It's not, who knows what it is, but they do it because they want an edge and they want to be heroes. And they don't realize what's going to happen down the line. And I wish I knew how to fix it. I don't.
Well, Mr. Montgomery,
I was just going to say, of course they can't fathom it, because as you get older, you right now, I'm in my 40s. As much as things already hurt, I can't imagine what they'll be like when I'm 80, right? And so similarly, they're under 20, so they have no idea.
Email me, I'll tell you.
Well, what? So will I. I mean, whenever I see like a football player go down, they go, "Oh, it's not a big deal. He'll be fine in a week." I have had 2 rotator cuff surgeries. I've had 8 broken bones. I broke my back. I broke my leg, and I broke my back in a football game. I broke my leg in a baseball game. Everything hurts. I'm 68. Okay, and it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. I'm like an old football player. And every time I see some young person injured, I'm like, ooh, 10 years. They wait till they're 45, because I'm sorry, Bo, it's going to get worse.
Oh, I know. No, I played until I was 30. So I'm familiar with the aches and pains of playing football.
But I wasn't a football player. I was a referee, but you know what? We get hit.
Yep.
And those baseballs, when my shoulder first got operated on, you know how many foul balls I took right off my shoulder, because there's padding here, but there's none in front. And I ended up, and if you've never had rotator cuff surgery, you don't want it. It's horrible. You can't do anything for 8 months. And I've had it twice now. So I know what it feels like. And my mother's 98 years old. Okay. And I look at her and go, I can't even imagine what I'm going to be just a pile of goo by then.
Well, we definitely have to get you back on, Miss Montgomery. I know all the guys love talking to you. I know Don has some things that he'd like to talk to you about. Unfortunately, we have a little feedback from his particular room there. So, but we'd like to get you back.
I'd love to join you. It's fun. I don't get to talk sports so much anymore.
Yeah, and there's also a little bit about public education I'd like to talk to you about too, but that's a different show.
Yep.
But we definitely like to get you back on. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
No, except that I'm happy to see more young ladies playing sports. I mean, I think when I was in school, the percentage of girls who played sports was like 4%. Now it's 42 or 44%. More girls are getting out there, and I think that's great. And maybe that's what's going to help save sports. I mean, when people say, how are we going to get more officials? I'm like, 51% of the population is female. Why aren't you out recruiting women to be officials? Yep. It's not brain surgery. Go out and have them do it. I'd go out and talk to them, but they don't invite me. So yeah, I'd like to tell you that it got better. I was more accepted as an official over the 40 years, but it was just as bad when I retired as it was when I started. The football officials and baseball umpires, it's still a boys' club. And so some guys just refuse to work with me forever. So they need to change that, and they need to recruit young ladies to be officials, and keep the games going.
Yeah. Well, now, Andy, just a quick question. I just wanted to ask: are you on social media at all?
Oh yes.
How people could reach out to you?
I have a website, AnnMontgomeryWriter.com. I'm an author. That's what I do now.
That's what I was going to ask you before you got off. Because you do have a few books out there.
I have 5, and I have one coming out in June. But the weird thing is, I don't write about sports.
No,
I write about not about sports at all. I was a sports writer for a while, but my books are all about societal issues, child abuse, domestic violence, environmental issues, archaeological looting, PTSD. I write about all of those kinds of things, but not about sports. So that's why I wasn't sure this was the group to mention that in. But yeah, my website is AnnMontgomeryWriter.com, and my name is spelled with an E, Ann. And all my social media sites are there. Because as an author, I have to be on all social media sites, and I blog, and I do a lot of podcasts. But they're always about different things. Sometimes they're about sports, sometimes they're about writing.
Well, we do have a few different subjects that we talk about, but we really like to thank you for your time this evening. And as I said, I will definitely be getting back in touch with you, and we look forward to having you back.
Well, I'd be delighted. I really would. Give me a call whenever you want a female perspective.
We will definitely do that. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Just thank you so very, very much. And I would love to continue the conversation whenever you are available. It is an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure.
The wonderful thing about being an author is generally I work on my own time. I got to smash my alarm clock. I never have to get up in the morning anymore. So if you guys are talking at night, I'm happy to join you.
Excellent.
All right. You have a good evening. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Nice meeting you all. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yes, rotator.
Don, let's see if we can get you back on here now without the reverb. Let's see what.
Oh, your volume must be all the way down. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, so your mic's not live.
You got to find that sweet spot there, Dan. Don, but in the meantime, let's go to Sue's Corner.
All right. Well,
is that better?
The feedback just came back.
It's brutal.
I'm sorry, guys.
So wow. I think probably the easiest way for you, Dan, is to when you're going to talk, turn it on, and then right as soon as you're done with your question, turn it back off.
Yeah, we'll try that. Okay. So,
all right. So Sue reviewed the agenda, and she had 2 items. So the first is, and I'll read it, the injury to Aaron Rodgers brings up the debate again regarding turf versus natural grass as the Jets play on a turf field. Right. Players tend to favor grass and are quite salty that the stadiums committed to hosting the World Cup soccer are happy to convert to grass for that, but not for football. The players feel the NFL favors turf and don't believe their statistics that there are no more injuries on turf than on grass. 16 out of 30 stadiums are grass fields. The problem for the argument from the players is that Dobbins also suffered an Achilles injury on Sunday on grass. So that was her first comment. Her second one is tennis. I was 100% into the US Open this year and was happy with both final results. I think Coco Gauff is an amazing player and seems like a great kid also. Sitting there on court trying to call her little brothers and grandma before the trophy ceremony was priceless. They didn't hear the phone ring, and when they called her back, you could read her lips saying, "I've got to go now," pointing to the trophy platform. Djokovic's win made him tied for most Grand Slam wins at 24. He will surpass that for sure by sheer will. Interesting side note, we noticed watching the matches. When the players' names and scores are listed on the TV, the flags of their home countries are shown. There were Russian players in both the men's and women's finals, and their flags show white. We were wondering if this was the choice of the players, but found it wasn't. Russian and Belarusian tennis players are forced to compete as neutral athletes. ESPN reflects that policy in its live US Open broadcast, but not on its app or website. It reminded me of the ban of athletes from these countries that is still in place in some sports. Is it fair to punish athletes for their country's politics and actions? And that's where she left it.
Okay. All right.
I jump in on that second one real quick. So I mean, it's not fair per se, but you know, if there's a ban on them and that's how they're eligible to play, until a ban is lifted, I think you kind of have to fall under that if you want to compete. I mean, is it right? No, but I mean, it's a workaround.
Okay. Let's talk a little college football here, guys. The Buffaloes had a beat down on the Cornhuskers to get their second straight win. So they rise up to number 18 in the coaches poll. Bill, what do you think? Is it a little too soon to put them in the top 25, or do you think they're just going to keep going up because the schedule is going to get harder?
No, they're not going to keep just going up. And I am a huge fan of what's happening there. But if you watch that game, and I've watched that game twice now, so I watched it once just like a normal person, then I broke the game down the second time I watched it. Very easily, that game could have been done very, very differently. First of all, Nebraska's is not quite to give back the black shirt, sobriquet to the defense. They're not quite at the black shirt level, but that's a better defense this year, much better than the last couple of years. They played sound defense with a couple of busts, but for the most part, other than a couple of mistakes, played very well. The offense, however, is my God, Nebraska's offense is just hot ass trash. Jeff Sims may be a bottom 6 quarterback in all of FBS, and I feel fairly confident saying that. I watch way too much college football. I mean, the things he does well is run. The things he does poorly are read defenses, throw the ball handling, faking, decision making, and eventually he got pulled. The kid that they put in, Hunter, I can't remember his last name now, something very German, is a walk-on and not very talented. But at least he's not going to set the house on fire, right? I mean, that's all that you can say about the other kid. At least he's not going to burn the house down. He can't really run. He can't really throw the ball either. But at least he doesn't set the house on fire. There were 2 turnovers that Jeff Sims were responsible for that were like, what? Like, they weren't even normal turnovers. Like, one of them was literally like the ball hits him in the hands and boop, on the ground. And another one, the ball hit they had like a U motion where like a fullback, H-back, whatever player was lined up in the U, right? That third tight end, whatever we call it, goes in motion. And guess what? There's a miscommunication between the quarterback and the center. Ball hits him while he's in motion, turnover. So which set up the first score for the Buffaloes. That defense played so well, and they had the offense twice put them in terrible positions. And the third time is an actual busting coverage, and Shedeur hits a wide open a post corner route. But the Buffaloes didn't play that well. So it wasn't a beatdown, James. It wasn't. That was a game where they played very poorly. Both teams played very poorly for about a half, and the Buffaloes just didn't manage to give the game back when the Huskers refused to win the game. And so that's what really happened, James. 3 of those scores that the Buffaloes got came off turnovers, and 2 of those turnovers were deep in the red zone. So without those turnovers, Nebraska scored. And plus, they also had a boing, right? They had a doink, right, where they a field goal that bounced off an upright. So Nebraska was just flat cursed in that game. But it was a very close game, except on the scoreboard. So no, I root for the Buffaloes, but they're not as good as you think they are if you just look at the score of that game. They're going to definitely have trouble with more talented teams. They got a little bit lucky against TCU also, but TCU isn't obviously the TCU of last year. But that was an offensive battle, 2 really good offenses, and neither defense really showed up in that game. In this game, both defenses showed up more, but Nebraska's defense was a better defense. But their offense was determined to give the game away. And they did it, So if you believe in your dreams, and keep going. But yeah, the Buffaloes are going to run into teams like Utah. They're not going to beat Utah. SC, they're probably not going to be. I mean, it'll be a fascinating, fun game, but USC is more talented and deeper. When they run into teams like Oregon, they're not going to beat teams like that. So you can rank them if you want to. It's fun. It's a cool story, but they're going to lose at least 3 or 4 games, and probably a couple of those games back to back later.
What's your thoughts on that, Bo?
Yeah, no. So I'm with Bill there. They're going to run into some teams that have some real talent. I mean, 8 of the Pac-12 teams are ranked, and they're going to play 7 of them. And then if they do make it to the championship game, they're probably going to play Washington, which would be the only one that they're going to miss. So the biggest takeaway from that Colorado team is look at their running stats. When they meet a team that has a solid defense on the back end, they're toast because they have no semblance of a run game. And the only reason they got 50 last week is because it was garbage time and they were killing the clock. It had nothing to do with their ability to run the ball. So as much as it is a fun story, and they will be bowl eligible. So that is a huge step forward from where they were a year ago. So I'm not taking anything away from, that Coach Prime action, because he has absolutely turned this program around. But the talk that he's going to be in the national championship is some nonsense. They haven't played a ranked team really yet. TCU is not the team that it was a year ago, right? They lost their quarterback. They lost other key elements to the NFL. It was not the same team. When they get into teams like SC, that has a good defense, and they have really fast linebackers. Now, all of a sudden, you have to beat them with arm talent, and you can't just run around. And without a running game, that's going to be an ugly football game. Fun to watch, but probably an ugly football game.
What do you think, Dave? Number 18 is as high as they go?
Well, I think we're going to find out at the end of September whenever they play Oregon and then USC in consecutive weeks.
Yes.
And that's going to tell, I think, the tale of the season. Are they the real deal or not? And even if they lose one of those games or both of those games, if they're close games, to me, they're legit. And so I'm fine with the 18 ranking. And then let's see where it goes at the end of September and see where they're at in October.
All right, let's see.
Here you go, Dan. It's your shot.
All right. I'm going to talk. Hope the echo's not too bad. I think as long as Dion is coaching, those guys believe. he's instilled to them a sense that we can do it. They're 18th now. They might end up the year at 18. That'd probably be considered success. But I just think I think that those kids are playing for him. They believe in him. He believes in them. And when you got that kind of thing going, if you can keep it close, sometimes you can pull out the win against a Washington or USC. We'll see. I don't think Oregon's all that tough this year. They barely got by Tech, and Texas Tech isn't very good. So I don't know if Oregon is Oregon from last year either. So but we'll see how it goes. But I'm a believer in Dion. I know a lot of my Aggie friends are hoping that A&M fires Jimbo Fisher and he'll come to A&M, but I think he's holding out for a Florida school myself. But that's just me.
Now, Don, I'm going to keep you on here while I got you, because number 11 Texas had a little success this week against number 3 Alabama. Come on, Don, talk about your man.
Well, Sarkisian has recruited well, and it shows on if we're about to make that move to the SEC, and in order to win the SEC, you have to be able to control the line of scrimmage on both offense and defensive sides. So that's what Texas did. They got to the Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, sacked him 5 times. They had like 3 or 4 tackles for losses. Texas won the line of scrimmage. Defensive line, they're big and they're fast. Offensive line are mean and nasty. Did not give up a sack. I think Ewers was under. I mean, they came close maybe once to sacking him, but he was pretty much untouched the whole game. So, Sark did a masterful game plan against Alabama. My only concern with Texas is keeping up that intensity. I've seen before, they'll beat Oklahoma. A few years ago they gave LSU the toughest game they had when LSU won the national championship, and they go out and they lose to Kansas. So yeah, crap like that. Texas needs to be consistent. I think they're on the right track. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think they will do fine, but we'll see, because Oklahoma, that's a grudge match, and then we have Kansas State's looking very salty right now in the Big 12. So we'll see how it works out in the wash.
All right. Well, hey, let's we got the echo. Okay, well, Bo, I'm going to bring this question to you, and it's about the young kid that's playing wide receiver as well as defensive back for the Buffaloes, Travis Hunter. Now he's played 274 snaps in 2 games. 129 of those. Let's see, he had 81.7% on defense. He participated in 129 of 156 snaps, and on defense, he was on the field 95% of the time, participating in 136 of 142 snaps. Plus, he had 9 on special teams. Man, Bo, can he sustain this?
Not likely. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of hits, right? So athletically, you might be able to, but if you're getting some square hits and you're having that kind of workload, even if he makes it through this season, that's not a career sustainable thing. You'll end up with injuries for sure. It's impressive. So I'm not taking anything away from the kid. It is absolutely impressive what he's able to do. And the fact that he's able to do both of those at a high level is amazing. But the odds of getting hurt in that scenario is so high. Especially as you get closer to thinking about the NFL, you're probably going to want to pick a side of the ball to get drafted on. But yeah, overall, do I think it's sustainable? Probably not.
Bill.
Okay, so somebody mentioned going back to the helmetless or leather helmet days or whatever. And of course, there was a time. I mean, Johnny Unitas played both ways. Heck, Fran Tarkington even at times played both ways. He salted away a big time victory one time with an interception that I think to beat Alabama.
I mean, athletes are a little different, though.
Oh, you think? Fran Tarkington, you think Fran Tarkington would struggle to play defensive back at the NFL now, Bo? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
A little, just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the SEC was, first of all, rather pale in those days for those that hadn't heard. But here's what I'm saying. All this to say, two things are going to play into this, and Bo mentioned one of them: do re mi fa sol la ti do. Right? A mark, a yen, a buck, or a pound makes that clinker clanking sound that makes the world go round. At some point, it will, as exciting and fun as it is, it will reduce his value for people to not know what he is. Scouts like to be able to tell somebody exactly what they see when they watch you. And so it'll be cool that he has this versatility. Versatility is good. Tweener is bad. So what he wants to do at some point, after he's shown people, hey, you can do this with me, you can do that with me, shut this foolishness down and show people you're the best corner they've ever seen, or at least they've seen in a very long time. And that's what I'm going to go on a not very far out on a limb, frankly, and say, you'll see that through this year. They're going to recruit the living daylights out of the receiver position, and they won't need him to do this next year. So for his draft year, he's going to spend that summer in the lab, as the kids like to call it, with Deion Sanders, that's who, becoming the best cornerback we've seen in college football in probably 20 years. And will they occasionally, in case of emergency, break glass and whip him back out on, returning a punt, returning a kickoff, playing some wide receiver as he makes that, maybe even a run for Heisman or whatever at last year? Sure. But he's going to play 130, 140 snaps on a regular basis? No. For a bunch of reasons. And like I said, next year they won't need it. He's building a beast in terms of recruiting there. They won't need it next year.
Dave.
Well, I played rugby. It's a different sport, though. It's a completely different sport. But those guys are tackling, they're hitting, and they're playing 80 minutes, not 60 minutes, 80 minutes.
Yep.
And they can do it. Now in football, it's a little bit different. It's staccato, but as has been mentioned, there were the 60-minute men. The players that played both ways. And when football started, that's the way it played. When the NFL first started, I think that they were limited to a 22 or 23 player roster.
Right. Later expanded to 25. Whee!
Right. And so now as we've specialized in everything, well, now you play on both. I think it's kind of refreshing to see a player play both ways. But I think, and I think Bo mentioned it, at some point he's going to have to make a business decision. This is big money now. And college football is no longer an amateur sport. And so he's going to need to make a business decision. I would imagine he's probably already talking to people that will potentially become his agent, probably family members, and they got to plot out his future. And so while I find it refreshing, you have to be realistic about it from a common sense point of view.
Yeah. David, his DMs look like a directory of the agents in the NFL, in case you're wondering.
Don, you want to chime in on this? I guess we missed Don. Okay.
Maybe Ranger has something to say.
Okay, let's see. Let's move on to the next one here. Let's talk about Mr. Saban. Wow, we don't have it. Most of our Alabama fans are gone. No Reggie tonight. Okay, but anyway.
It's a day of mourning. Well, week. It's a week of mourning in Alabama.
So, Dave, we'll let you start with this. Saban says the future is now after some fixable tide errors. is Saban is it back up against the wall, and could a two-loss team perhaps make the playoffs this year? Maybe even a 3-loss team, considering the competition.
Well, I think they could do it in 2024. A 3-loss team, maybe. But this year, the college football playoffs are still limited to 4 teams, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be awful tough. I mean, because I think that they have to be have such a ranking so that even if they win the SEC, if they're not ranked high enough, they still might not qualify, if I'm not mistaken. And so, like with just a 14 playoff, I think what Alabama has to do right now, they have 1 loss. I think that they're going to need to win out to guarantee a playoff spot. It's possible, I guess, but I think it'll be a lot easier next year.
Bo, what's your thoughts? Does a 2-loss team make it?
Probably not yet. Next year system for sure. And even if it was this system, but the teams had already moved to the other conferences, there's a chance because the conferences would beat up on each other a little more with more teams being in them and more talent being in them. That being said, this ain't that year. So if you're a two-loss team, you're probably out of the national championship conversation. But I mean, so Saban misses one in the last 12 years. I think he'll be all right.
You say that like a man who doesn't live in Alabama.
That's what I was going to go ahead. Finish your thoughts there, Bill.
So here's why it's, I think, beyond unlikely that we see. You said 3-loss. 3 losses never happened. And I don't think, obviously when we get to 12 teams, it can happen. But think of why it's so unlikely to happen. If Florida State runs the table in the ACC, right, which could happen, then you've got the Big 12. And the Big 12 champion, let's say they have 1 loss. You have a 1-loss Big 12 champion. Let's say you have an undefeated ACC champion. Now, you need to have the Pac-12 shut out entirely for the SEC to get a second team in, or the Big 10 to get shut out entirely. How likely is that, right? Okay, the Pac-12 has been ignored many times, so that gives you hope. But unless the Big 10 champion also has 2 losses, you're kind of screwed. Because if either Ohio State, Michigan, or could there be a third team maybe in the running? Or Penn State. Or Penn State. If any of them have 1 loss, they're in. And they're the champion. Then 1 loss, they're in. Okay, now we're running out of seats at the table. Right? I mean, how many? We're only at 4. Until we expand to 12, it's difficult. Is someone beating Georgia? If so, please tell me who. Okay, so how does Alabama get in?
There is the voting element, though.
Oh, I get that there's a voting element.
So sometimes weird things happen.
Sometimes weird things happen. And we've seen weird things happen occasionally. But a 2-loss Alabama has to really hope for some very weird things.
For sure.
They've got to hope that, okay, we're used to kind of ignoring the Pac-12. Let's say the Pac-12 gets shut out of it. The Big 12 is rarely shut out of it, though, right? As long as if they have if their champion has 1 or no losses, they're in. If the ACC champion has 1 or no losses, they're likely in. And the Big 10 champion can have 1 loss and get in often because it happens a lot. So you better hope that the Big 10 champion has 2 or more losses. You got to hope that, and like I said, the Pac-12 better also get ignored again. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you're in trouble because who's beating Georgia again? I mean, I'd like to hear it. So you've got to be the second SEC team in, and that does sometimes happen, but it takes some things to happen. And if you've got 2 losses, and I'm going on the record as saying I think Alabama gets at least 2 losses this year.
At least.
Right, at least. You got I'm saying no. I don't think it happens with this year. And no, it won't be okay. Bo. It won't be okay. 2 losses is not okay in Alabama. These people are losing their stuff now, and it's 1 loss.
Yeah. Yeah, as a Washington fan, it'll be fine. I am here for that dumpster fire. I will bring marshmallows and everything.
Bill, give us a quick resume of Ohio State's number 1 quarterback that they just named this week.
For the moment, you talk about Kent McCord?
Yes.
He's a big kid with a very strong arm. However, his decision-making is, which is to be expected. He hasn't played a lot. And so the advantage and disadvantage of developing the quarterback systems the way they have at Ohio State, where you don't get in until we've put 60 points on whoever it is, Youngstown State or wherever it is. It means that your backups only play when they're like handing the ball off or, kneeling down or whatever. They don't get some SEC schools and even some schools in other places will put, the backup in when the game isn't completely out of reach and say, hey, you can throw the ball, whatever. Right.
Hey, Bill, do you realize that Ohio State pays for our entire football program at Youngstown State? Thank you, Mr. Trussell.
Right. They do. They do.
Thank you, Mr. Trussell.
They pay a couple of smaller schools football programs entire freight. And that's how it should be. I'm not one of schools against the money games because I went to one of the schools that played in the money games. Like we understood, like, yeah, Rutgers, whatever, you could score 63 out of it. That's what floats your boat. Just make sure the check clears. So
that's right. That's how we feel at Youngstown State.
Right.
Just make sure the check clears.
But to your question, Kent McCord is less mobile than the last couple of quarterbacks they've had. Joe Burrow, though he's not a runner, had very good functional mobility. JT Barrett was a good mover. Dwayne Haskins, not a terrific athlete, could move around the pocket. And obviously, most recently, in Coleridge Bernard Stroud Jr., you had a guy who, as we saw in the Georgia game, could actually hurt you with his feet when he needed to. You can scratch all that off the dance card from Mr. Kent McCord. When people are saying, oh, the quarterback position is changing, not in Ohio State's book it isn't, because they are going with a good time, old school, hang there in the pocket, hitch, throw the ball away or get hit, pocket passer. Now, that may change. His backup is a better athlete. And it was apparently a close battle all throughout camp. So, and they've been trying to work him in. So they're going against their normal way of having a definite alpha dog. They're playing the backup in more in-game situations where the game is not out of reach that I've seen in recent memory. So I think they're not 100% all in on Kent McCord, but they want him to win the job. They are rooting for him to win the job because he's by far the better passer and just the better all-around quarterback. But he can't really move. And their offensive line may be a half notch down from, the last few years. So that also sort of works against them when they finally get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule. I think they only pick up 1 loss, and it might be Penn State. I'm feeling I've got a lot of Penn State whatevers. I just have a weird premonition about Penn State this year, but they're still a very good football team. Not many teams can beat them. I think Michigan's taken a step back. Hope they enjoyed their time in the sun. They'll still be a good team, but once again, 2 losses that mean utter anarchy in a place like Alabama, and you get criticized even at Michigan, but they won't be setting things on fire at least. But I think that there should be a lot of at the top. There'll be a good competitive between the top programs in the Big Ten. Then there'll be a fight for the middle, and there'll be a couple of terrible programs. Big Ten normal year, basically. But yeah, Ohio State should still be near the top.
All right, gentlemen, let's jump to the NFL here. And as we know, 4 plays into the game, down goes ayahuasca. The Bills defense chokes the Jets in the first half, but the Jets D uses 4 takeaways and an OT special teams TD to beat the Bills 22-16. with ayahuasca down, how does that change the landscape of the AFC East, Bo?
Depends on what the Jets do next. If the plan is what they said earlier today, that Zach is the guy, then they're about to have a long season, because we watched this movie last year and it didn't end super great. Now, if they come around and they don't have any money to spend, right? They were paying Rodgers no matter what, and they don't have any draft picks to give away. So they're going to have to go get a very undesirable vet to fill that role, because you don't have time for a guy to learn, right? Like, you can't go get another project. You have to go get a Carson Wentz, a Matt Ryan, somebody that's going to give you 3,500 yards and a 2-to-1 touchdown ratio. That's what you need. You need somewhat competent quarterback play, and then you have to hope that you can Trent Dilfer your way into a Super Bowl ring, because if you have to have a guy learn on the fly, you might as well stick with Zach Wilson, because you're going to not be competitive in your division. So yeah, it changes a lot. Did they get a win? Sure, but it had nothing to do with their offense. It had everything to do with the fact that Josh Allen completed more passes to a Jet than Rodgers did.
Dave, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that the Jets are going to have to work some magic on the free agent wire. And now I know the Steeler fans are already talking about, well, hey, can we get like a 6th-round draft pick for Mason Rudolph or something like this? But I think that maybe one of these free agents, maybe Matt Ryan, because he didn't announce his retirement. And, that defense looked pretty hot. Now, Josh Allen, I don't know what's going on with him. He seems to be making some bad decisions. The Buffalo team's good. So I'm thinking that Jets defense is pretty hot. And now they just may decide, let's go with Zach Wilson and reset for next year, a la the Cardinals. But I mean, the competitor in me would be wanting to go out. Let's find somebody that's serviceable, that can help us stay in some games, and then hopefully that defense is going to get us through there. But I was actually shocked at Buffalo. I thought Buffalo was going to win that game easily, with Aaron Rodgers or not, and that surprised me, and that was that was an NS or AFC East competitor. So I don't know. If I'm the Jets, I might be wanting to go out to get somebody, because they may be thinking, well, hey, we might be able to get into the playoffs.
Don.
Yeah, so I'm along with Dave. I think the story of that game was how bad the Bills looked. I had the Bills in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs this year, and I did not see that Bills team the other night, not by a long shot. So I think that's the big story here. Yeah, Rodgers got hurt, but he's 40 years old, and we were just talking to Ann Montgomery about injuries and that, and how you don't recover. So the fact that the Bills, with their golden boy quarterback, returning the ball over, to me that's the big issue right now. As far as quarterbacks available, I believe Colt McCoy is still out there. Got released by the Phoenix after he's named starter 1 week. Next week later, he's put on waivers. So hopefully Colt McCoy can go find somewhere to play.
Bill, give us the last thoughts on this.
5 words. Learn to speak Flacco-ese, buddy. So for those who are not familiar, Robert Saleh is actually a fan of Joe Flacco's. Now, I don't claim to understand why that is, but he does. He's a fan of his. He likes the guy. Plus, knows the nomenclature, knows the playbook, knows the way to the practice field. Also hasn't, I guess that helps. Also has not turned in retirement papers. and will work for relatively cheap because they don't have, as much as you can't turn off the salary cap. This isn't baseball where you can just pay it a little, extra, or basketball where you pay a luxury tax. No, it's a hard cap, and they don't have any money really. So, yeah, learn to speak Flacco-Leese.
Bill, I'm going to start out with you here. The Fans come west and beat the Chargers 36-34.
Yep.
Tua throws for 466 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. Hill has 11 receptions, 215 yards, and 2 TDs. Bill, what's the deal here? People were just knocking to it last week.
Yeah, the deal is this is the team I predicted to win the AFC East. I'm feeling pretty good about the prediction.
What about you? What's your thoughts on that game, Dave?
Well, I think as long as Tua is healthy, I think Bill's going to be happy. I don't think in all of our discussions about Tua, it was never that he can't be an electric player.
Right.
It was always about his availability. And if they can protect him, if he can avoid getting hurt, to go out in the first game of the season, put up 38 points on the West Coast. Yeah, I bubble wrap him.
Yeah. Bo, 466 yards?
Yeah, I mean, to their point, nobody ever said that he wasn't going to be able to play. It's just, can he stay on the field? What this really was a testament to is the fact that Brandon Staley, being a defensive coach, has a horrendous defense. And I've been saying that he's probably going to get fired this year. I don't know that he makes it through the whole year. Kellen Moore may be your interim head coach before the end of the season.
Ooh, okay. All right.
To speak Kellen Maurice, buddy.
I was hoping Demetrius would get here, so I'm going to skip those last questions. I'm going to try to make those last. Bo, the Packers make a statement of their own. They beat the Bears 38-20. Love threw for 254 yards and 3 TDs. Your thoughts? I was just asking last week. Did the Packers hit the trifecta?
So no, I think what this game taught you more about the Bears than the Packers. So Love's going to be fine, right? He's a third-year fourth-year quarterback, right? So I mean, he has years in this system. So you expect him to be able to come out and be relatively polished. He hasn't had a lot of game time, but he has a ton of practice in this system. So for him to play well wasn't a shock. For the Bears to play as badly as they did in every phase of the game, that's really the main takeaway that I got from this is despite all the things that they brought in to make sure that Fields was protected and had weapons, and ultimately it didn't matter. So now you have to see, is this a week 1 issue where a lot of guys don't play in the preseason anymore anyway, so this is just an extension of the preseason for them? Or is this something that we're going to see this season? And, we're only a couple of days away from finding out.
Bill, 56 yards. I believe that's what the Packers held Fields to.
There's 2 things, and Bo is to some extent right about both things he said. Teams don't play, particularly young players, frankly, I think should play more in the preseason. And you may not play them a whole game, but playing them, the old system was your starters would play at least in game 3, the whole first half, and then the first series, the second half. That was kind of the way everybody practically did in the old days. And that was so that you got used to the rhythm of playing a football game, at least slightly over half of a football game, at least. Now, almost no team plays a frontline starter for an entire half and then a series on top of that, unless they're literally fighting off the challenge of a younger player and they want to make sure they're making the right choice. And that occasionally happens, but rarely do you see that anymore. And so for a player as young as Justin Fields, I get the risk. I know how nervous you are, but really he and his receivers, some of whom are, if not new to the team, new to their role, right? New to not being a complimentary receiver. Everyone had to move up a notch. There's no Allen Robinson. There's no guy who people think of as a number one right now. DJ Moore was a number two who was getting a chance to be a number one. Darnell Mooney was a guy that people thought of originally as sort of a return guy who could be maybe a wide receiver 4, who is essentially a wide receiver 2. Place Claypool is a mistake they signed in free agency. And they have Cole Kmet, who is, I think, pretty much dead on average, like an average NFL wide receiver, who people talk about as if he's more than that, or some people do. But I think he is that. You're exactly average NFL wide receiver. Tight end. Their wide receiver depth beyond the names I gave you, I could tell you who they are, but they're not people you would recognize. And they've had a sort of a rotation. They've had like various Pettis brothers float through town, but they don't have anyone that terrifies you. They have one person that sort of worries you at wide receiver, no one who terrifies you. They have a tight end who doesn't, I mean, you sleep like a baby when you're thinking about facing him. Their running back room has one guy I really like in it, and the guy who's got potential, right? So Deontay Foreman is a guy that's got tantalizing potential. People have talked about Roschon Johnson a lot, and I think he becomes a really solid third part of that. But they really need to pound people with Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert is a potential star, and they don't quite see it yet. But if they do, and they build around pounding people with Khalil Herbert, and then play action and some quarterback run and things like that, they can win some ugly old school 13-10, 17-9, 14-7 type football games. Boring, super boring games that people below the age of like 40 will hate. But do you want to win or do you want to entertain? If the Bears want to win, they need to essentially turn back the clock about 50 years. Now, if they want to entertain, they're going to lose a lot of games.
Yeah. Dave, your thoughts on that? The big payday for Justin Fields, the big build-up for Justin Fields. Then, like I say, 56 yards?
Yeah, well, the Bears, like Bill was saying, the Bears made a lot of moves to ostensibly assist Justin Fields. And they gave up the 32nd pick in the draft for Chase Claypool, who can't even do a proper dive on the field. I don't know if anybody saw that clip, but it was a joke. And so I think that the Bears, I would question who's evaluating that talent because I think some of the moves they just swung and they missed. And so then that really goes to the general manager, and then that goes to the scouting staff, not the college scouting staff so much as their professional players scouting staff. Now with Jordan Love, hats off. Not many, a lot of teams, they want to play, their quarterbacks as early as they can. This is his third season, I think. That's kind of old school. That's the way it used to be. You'd have the starting quarterback and a young quarterback being developed behind him, and it worked. Now, was that because of the Bears being so bad, or Green Bay being so good? I'm not so sure, but the bottom line is that they did what they had to do to win, and they did it with Jordan Love. So that's where I'm at.
On your turntable.
Don't give a fuck what's in here, 'cause I'm a rider, getting down, going hard, baby, we don't stop. Don't give a fuck what's in here, 'cause I'm a rider.
I started that off because I'm going to Don here, and first I wanted to get your idea on the Bears and Jordan Love, and then we'll talk about the ass whooping that the Cowboys put on the Giants. So go ahead, Don.
All right, so I'll discuss the Packers and the Bears. So first of all, hats off to the Packers on a great win. I like to see the Jordan Love do well because he's replacing the legend, his own mind guy, Aaron Rodgers. So I thought he handled himself well. I liked the story about his mom coming to the games and everywhere she sits in the stands, and that was kind of cool. Uh, so yeah, good job, Packers. Good job. The Bears. Let's talk about them. All the stuff they did in the off season, I don't think the Bears have a true identity. I don't think they know who they are. I think probably the head coach has an idea of what he wants to be, but he's not sharing that vision with anyone else. Justin Fields is a better quarterback than 57 yards passing, much better, but we're just not seeing it. So, if they get those wrinkles ironed out, I think they'll be fine. Well, no, they're not going to be fine, but they'll be better. Yeah, they'll be better than what we saw the other night. Um, so, talk about the Cowboys. Okay, Cowboys beat the Giants. Yeah, okay. Fool's gold. Uh, Giants are terrible. I mean, that's like me, taking my 6-year-old nephew to the basketball court and beating him, in horse. Um, and I suck at basketball. So, yeah. Good job, Cowboys, whatever. But it's a long season. They got plenty of opportunities to prove that they're overrated.
Okay, Don, cut it off. I have a question for you. Okay, the Vikings, they lost their home opener to the Bucks, 20-17, despite Kirk Cousins passing for 2 TDs, 344 yards. But Baker Mayfield got his first win as a Buck starter. Don, talk to us about Baker and his first win.
So you're telling me that Baker is capable of winning the game over Kirk Cousins? Imagine that. We talk about I like Kirk Cousins, but he's not your guy that's going to go out and win a lot of games for you. I mean, he's puts up decent stats. Baker Mayfield, he's hot potato. I mean, he could be amazing one week, and next week, he's not so good. So Baker Mayfield, his number one goal is to be consistent throughout the season. Stay in the pocket. Work on your short game. High percentage completion passes, and then work from there. Keep it simple. Don't try to do too much. Get the scoreboard, win that part, and then move on. Baker Mayfield is exceptional talent. We saw that. I saw that in high school. I saw him play up the road. I saw him play in college. He just needs to settle down. Take a handful of Adderall before he gets on the field, maybe. No, I'm serious. I mean, that's.
Oh man. Bill, you want to talk about that Vikings loss to Baker?
So I think it was here, or maybe on another show, I told people that if you're looking for a surprise team to be picking in the top 6, the Vikings could be that team. I think they're going to end up winning 5 or 6 games this year. I am not at all surprised. And the thing about Baker Mayfield is when Baker Mayfield is able to have that talk with himself. There's a meme where a guy's like looking in the mirror, pointing at his reflection, right? And when Baker Mayfield looks in the mirror and points at the reflection and says, all I have to do is not crash the bus, right? If Baker Mayfield realizes that he doesn't have to try to be Brett Favre, he doesn't have to try to make things happen that aren't there. He doesn't have to try to. Now he had one little old Baker Mayfield moment, one of his, plant the flag, grab the crotch moments when he trash talked. Who was the DB he stiff armed twice?
That's right. Get your weight up, little boy.
Yes, to get your weight up, right. Not what's his name? It'll come back to me. But the one who they got rid of Pat Peterson to start out at corner. other than that moment, he played, quite frankly, like Chad Pennington. And while that's not the sexiest or most fun thing in the world to do, if he does that, if he hits the ball in the fairway and putts for par, you have a shot to win a very weak division. Now the question is that what they want him to do? Now nobody wants to tank, but you wonder sort of in the back of your mind, what were their intentions, right? Because they're in a weird place as a franchise. They're between, they're so 9 games might be enough. 9 and 8 might do it. You might stand atop the summit, if that's the proper term to use, of the NFC South with 9 wins. You can win 9 games with Baker Mayfield. And that's a good team, particularly on defense. You can win 9 games. So they are a team, they could either end up at the bottom or the top of that division. And I could see either one being equally likely. So someone mentioned, which Baker Mayfield do we get? Somebody goes in that mirror and says, I could beat Chad Pennington. Now, that's not something you like saying to yourself, right? Because your pride rises up and says, no, I'm the first pick in the whole goddamn draft. And I'm going to show them they're wrong, right? I'm going to prove everybody. If you think that way, that's how you end up like going 3-14. But if you can just say, I'm going to Chad Pennington it up out there, I'm going to hit check downs, I'm going to throw to the crossers, throw it on time. If it's not there, I'm going to throw it away or run for 3 yards in the slot. It's the most boring way to play quarterback in the world, but that could be 9 wins.
Dave.
Well, to me, that game, and it's a little counterintuitive, but I think it was about defenses and in situational football. And so, Cousins had much better statistics than Mayfield, but Mayfield got those 2 touchdowns. And my whole question about the Vikings coming into this season is did their defense take a hit with some of the losses that they had, or were they going to be as good as they were last year? And then that was going to drive their season. And it seems to me that they let down at the wrong moments, and that's what helped them win the game. And conversely, even though Tampa Bay gave up a lot more passing yards to Cousins, 3 turnovers, and to me, it was about the defenses coming in there, because I didn't think that Tampa Bay would be doing that much this year, and I still don't. So,
Bo, you want to give the final thoughts on that game?
Yeah. So, I mean, that is the most Kirk Cousins career game as you could have. Kirk Cousins and Matt Stafford through their careers were stat monsters that couldn't win. And that embodied that game right there. They put up good stats, didn't come out with a W. And I mean, honestly, the Vikings weren't as good as they were last year. They won 11 of their games by 1 score. There's a lot of luck involved in achieving that. And are they going to do something like that again? Absolutely not. At the end of last season, I was saying they're going to take a massive step back because they're not doing anything to make their team better. And there was a lot of situational things that had to fall in place for them to win those games last year. And you're not going to do that year in and year out. And historically, the Vikings don't, or Kirk Cousins. And then you're going to come into game 2 and you're going to face the Eagles in prime time, which is not necessarily Cousins' wheelhouse. So I'm going to go with the Vikings. Go ahead and start 0-2. I was a little bit surprised because at the end of the day, it's Baker, it's Tampa. The team isn't great. Baker is wildly inconsistent. So you didn't really know which Baker was going to show up. But the one that did show up was definitely good enough to beat that Vikings team.
Bo, the Eagles' offense was kept out of the end zone for the entire second half. The Patriots quarterback, Mac Jones, outdueled Jalen Hurts, throwing 3 touchdown passes, and the Patriots lost. Were you surprised that the game was that close?
I mean, yes. I thought that the Eagles were going to win by a touchdown. Vegas had the line at 5.5, so it's not like they thought it was going to get wildly out of hand or anything. That Patriots team does have a nice defense, and at the end of the day, it's a Patriots team, so both offense and defensive lines are going to be good. So as long as Mac Jones doesn't come out and just be terrible, they can be competitive. That defense will keep you in games, and that offensive line is going to keep him from getting murdered. It's not like it's Daniel Jones where, he was just waving the white flag to get out of that game. It wasn't a surprise. The other thing about that is it is week 1 and nobody on that Eagles team played in the preseason. So this is a week 1, figure your team out. Was it closer than it should have been? Sure. Did they do enough to get the win? Obviously. I feel like the separation as the year goes on will be much more drastic.
Let's see. Dave, quarterback Sam Howell had a quarterback rating of 45.4 in the Commanders' first win of the season over the Cardinals. The Cardinals quarterback Josh Dobbs had a quarterback rating of 21.6. What the hell's going on here, Dave?
Yeah. Well, one, I think it tells you all that the Cardinals are going with Josh Dobbs as their starting quarterback. And I don't mean any ill will toward Josh Dobbs. Pittsburgh Steelers fans love Josh Dobbs, but he's not an NFL starting quarterback, in my opinion. I think Sam Howell, okay, give him a chance, and his ceiling is much higher than Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs is past his ceiling, and Washington was losing to the Cardinals in the beginning of the game, and so I see that as the season goes off, Josh Dobbs is not going to end up being the starting quarterback with the Cardinals. I hope he does start whenever they play the Steelers, but I don't think he'll end the season as the starter. I think Sam Howell probably will, because their paths are going in opposite directions. Washington they still have a lot of residual issues going back from the past ownership, and they're a team in transition with new ownership that's trying to get themselves established. It's going to be interesting how long they keep the head coach there. Because they've brought him over, and we'll see. He's well respected, but we'll see how long he lasts with new ownership.
Let's see, Bill. The Rams ended up defeating the Seahawks. Was it 30-13? Bill, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, I'd be the wrong person to ask. I had a really good week, and this is not one of the part of that good week, though. So all the things I just said, and maybe sound so smart earlier, I'm going to let you know that I'm not that smart. I really thought that the Rams would put up some statistics, because somebody just mentioned, Matt Stafford and, the old, once again, speak of being the Spider-Man meme, Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins. Now, of course, Matt Stafford's got a ring. So Kirk Cousins is probably, wishing he was Matt Stafford when it comes to that. But one of those guys where, Hall of Fame, probably statistics. And Stafford, because of the Super Bowl, has a chance to even make the Hall of Fame. Cousins is going to be a tough way when his time rolls around. Sort of like Ken Anderson trying to get in with the senior committee and finally getting in, almost assuredly getting in now. But the Rams defense didn't show up. The Rams offense didn't really the Seahawks defense. Sorry, Seahawks defense didn't really show up. Their offense didn't really show up. Their special teams wasn't anything special. So just teams, I guess there was no special there. There was nothing to point to and say, yeah, we can build around So I guess the good news is Kenneth Walker the third looked pretty decent. Yeah, coming back off injury. You got that. You got that to go with. There's that. That's about it. So I'm going to chalk it up to week 1. And if this happens again, I will say that I was wildly wrong about the Seahawks. Is what I will say at that point.
So it's actually going to linger. It's going to linger past week 1 because this Seahawks team lost both offensive tackles at the half. Right. So they were outscored 23-0 because Geno was getting absolutely trucked after halftime. And then they proceeded to lose Lockett at one point. They lost their new corner in Devin Witherspoon. So, yes, although Walker did come out and look good, the offensive line couldn't create anything after halftime, and you're not going to win a lot of games that way. The biggest issue with that is now Lucas is on IR. He is gone for the next 4 games. They brought in a guy that is 8,000 years old to try and fill his spot. The Hawks are going to have a real rough go of it against Detroit this week. Detroit can put up points, right? And their defense, let's be honest, isn't the Rams. They don't have an Aaron Donald over there as a pass rusher, but their defense is far improved from last year. So this is going to be a tough game for Seattle to try and bounce back on. And honestly, I don't think they do. I think they end up dropping to 0-2 to start this season.
Yeah, well,
and as a Hawks fan, that bums me out.
We'll get the predictions after we finish the lightning round here. Don, this is for you. So the Falcons rookie Bijan Robinson scored his first TD as a professional. It was a pass. Tyler Algieri scored 2 rushing touchdowns in a 24-10 victory over the Panthers. So, Don, how impressed were you with the former Texas guy, a running back? And what did you think about Bryce Young's as he threw for 146 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions in his season debut?
Okay, so we'll talk about Bryce Young first. Not a lot expected, from a rookie quarterback. Thing is when you're a rookie and you get that much talent, it's still a learning curve. So he'll get better. He's got a high ceiling. So and I'm a big Bryce Young fan, despite the fact that Texas beat Alabama. Bryce Young, I mean, everything I've heard about the young man has been all very positive. Bijan Robinson, I didn't get to see the game. I just saw the highlights, so I went and watched YouTube, and he got that catch he made and that first move he put reminded me of what Eric Metcalf did his first touchdown as a rookie for Cleveland. Same little pattern, and put that little step on, and then he was in the end zone. So kind of had a little deja vu there from Eric Metcalf, former Longhorn great. But I think both Bijan and Bryce Young have bright futures in the NFL. Still got a lot more football to play this year, so I'm looking forward to watching both young men develop.
Let's see. Let's go to Bo. The Prince led the Jaguars to a 31-21 victory over the Colts. Wide receiver Ridley catches his first touchdown pass in 2 seasons, I believe. Thoughts on how they used Ridley, and how impressed were you with Anthony Richardson's pro debut?
Yeah, so, I mean, that kind of went how I thought it would go. I thought the Jags would win the game. They're the better team. They're a more polished team. Anthony Richards did what I figured he'd do. He'd come out, make some athletic plays, make some mistakes, and ultimately the mistakes will have you come up short. So everything about that game was more or less what I was expecting to see out of that game. The one thing I did like was Anthony Richardson did seem to have a little bit better command than I originally thought he was going to. I thought he was going to throw more picks. But the Jags don't have the defense to create that. When they face some of the better defenses, I would imagine his mistake, the volume of mistakes will get amplified.
Bill, Ratbirds quarterback Lamar Jackson throws 17 passes for 169 yards, no TDs, and a 25-9 victory over the Texans. Lamar finished with a quarterback rating of 13.6.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
I got to go again, Bill. What the fuck is going on here?
I mean, I predicted the Ravens would win the. Now they still a little bit out of sorts, but I still believe in them in winning the division. They have they have depth of talent. They fixed a lot of their real problems. The wide receiver group has been a problem for them for a while. I think would be a fair way to put it. They had a 1,000-yard receiver last, I believe, the rookie season of Marquise Brown, who has not been on the team for a while. So that was the last time they had a 1,000-yard receiver. I think that is broken this year, perhaps by another rookie in Trey Flowers, or either he or Rashad Bateman. And I mean, I won't say both. That seems a bit much, but I think both break 800, and one of them I think goes over 1,000. I think that Odell Beckham Jr. chips in with probably well over with a little over 650. So that alone, right? If my math is right, you're already at around 2,300 yards passing. So, but they're not going to be an aerial circus. Like they'll be more open than last year. But I hope people don't think that it's going to, they're not going to put up Tua numbers. Like that's not the way they're built. Even with Todd Monken coming in, they still want to run the ball. Obviously, the loss of J.K. Dobbins hurts a bit, but smart fantasy players already picked up Justice Hill on waivers. And if you're smart, throw him in the flex. He's going to give you consistently, in standard scoring leagues, 9 to 12.5 points. But the fact is that they are a really good team. They have good linebacking. They have good defensive back, secondary, and they're finally getting pass rush out of David Ojabo and Odafe Owe. And that was what they were waiting for, right? Can we finally get some pass rush out of these young guys we drafted? And the answer was no for 2 years. But now they're starting to get some pass rush out of their young pass rushers. So if that continues, if the young pass rushers continue to develop and become more productive, as they learn this offense, and once again, say it with me, everybody, you don't play your starters enough in preseason. What happens week 1? Ugly football. Yep. I predicted we see a lot of ugly football. Remember that when we talked about that? I meant it. I wasn't just joshing around. It'll really take till about week 3 before you see teams look like how they should really look.
Bo, the Clowns made a circus out of the division opener, taming the Bungles 24-3. The Clowns secondary hold Chase Higgins combo to 5 catches for only 39 yards. As a matter of fact, Higgins was held with no catches. What was your thoughts on that game, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, that's just another case of it being week 1 and these starters not playing. It was really ugly football. I had the Browns winning that game, but I mean, we don't really know what either team is. Like that was them getting back in the swing of playing ball because they didn't play in the preseason. I really don't like this trend because you're essentially just creating an atmosphere of bad football. And if I want to watch bad football, I'll go watch high school football.
I don't know, Don, you might take a little offense at that there, but
I mean, they're just not as skilled. It just is what it is.
Don, this is for you. The Saints quarterback Derek Carr throws for 301 yards in a 16-15 opening win over the Titans. Running back Derrick Henry is held to 63 yards carries.
So the Titans aren't a very good, they're they've seen better days. I think Carr to the Saints. I think that was a good move. I always liked the Saints. I think they look pretty good on paper, and I think that this is a situation where potential and reality are about to meet. I think they're off to a good start. I like what I see. Titans, not so much. I mean, they've struggled, and so I think that's going to continue for a while.
Okay, Dave.
Me.
Cameron Haywood, one injury. Deontay Johnson, another injury. The Steelers attempted only 10 rushes, while Pickett dropped back 51 times. He even spoke about it. He didn't mention no names in particular, but we know he was talking about Dan Campbell. The defense gives up 30 points, 220 yards passing, 186 yards rushing. Dave, what's going on? What's happening here? Are we falling apart at game one?
This was a tough weekend for me. I first Saturday night I attended the Pitt Cincinnati game, and Pitt got embarrassed at Acrisure Stadium, and then I went to the Steelers game, and in the beginning before the kickoff, it was very exciting. It was a packed house, but I've gone to a lot of Steeler games over the years, and other teams have claimed that they would try to take over the stadium, never succeeded. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore. Buffalo gets a lot of fans there. They travel very well. But I have never, ever seen so many visiting fans at a Steelers home game. It was really incredible. And Steeler fans around, everybody that I know that I talked to, they were just shocked by it. They'd never seen anything like it. Now, as far as the game, and my hats off are to them. Very good crowd. They were decent people, and they were spread out throughout the stadium. I mean, you could see red everywhere. So my hats off to them. Now, as far as the game is concerned, they failed just in every, after a very encouraging training camp and preseason. Mike Tomlin had some very physical practices. They were playing. The starting offense didn't get a lot of snaps because they just were scoring, and so then they would come off the field in the preseason. But they were just horrible. Kenny Pickett was off. He had in the first drive, he had Deontay Johnson wide open. He just overthrew him. And if Deontay Johnson had caught that ball, he might have gone. But it was a type of game where even when things went right for the Steelers, they went wrong. So in the second half, Deontay Johnson, 26-yard catch and run. And he's still going. He kind of cuts in. Next thing you know, he's on the ground grabbing his hamstring, lost for the game. Now he's going to be lost for several weeks. Allen Robinson, somebody had mentioned him earlier, 31-yard reception. What happens on that very same play? Chuks Okorafor is concussed. He's out of the game in a concussion protocol. That forces the Steelers to move Dan Moore from left tackle over to right tackle, and then comes the rookie Broderick Jones at left tackle. Very next play, and I believe it was on Dan Moore from the right, Kenny Pickett is sacked. They did not score on either of those. Two explosive plays, and they failed to score. The game plan, I think that San Francisco outcoached them. I think that they had a better game plan. The San Francisco players outmuscled the Steelers. They were out hitting them, and there were some. They tend to hit high. There was like a lot of, and they were actually not penalties. Like Anthony McFarland was running down the field, and they clumped him across the helmet and took him out of bounds. They were very, very much more physical than the Steelers players. I think they caught them by surprise, and they just outplayed them. Peterson, he was talking about Brock Purdy's tells. Well, he gave up 2 touchdowns. One of them, he slipped on the play. The other one, he actually had good coverage on Brandon Ayuk. But nevertheless, he got the touchdown goes against him. He did not walk his talk, and I would prefer him not to talk. Just play. So I had done an article prior to the game, and the premise of my article was, are Steeler fans too optimistic about the Steelers' chances? And I'm one that said, hey, they might go 12-5.
Oh,
well, I think, and originally before I was saying 10-7. Well, I might have to relook and maybe go back to my original prediction, because they just did not look ready. Now, Monday night, Cleveland is coming to town. I'm driving back up to Pittsburgh for the game. What I'm curious about, number one, do the Cleveland fans, for the first time in the last 25 years, are they successful at taking over Acrisure Stadium? Because the friends that I'm talking to over in Cleveland, they are sure talking about it. And it's going to be an interesting matchup. So, and one thing I did want to mention, the 10 rushes. Well, the reason for it is the Steelers started out with 4 3-and-outs.
Yep.
They did not get a first down until after the 2-minute warning in the first half, until they got their first down of the game. And then by that time, they were already down 20-0. So they had to go to a hurry-up passing offense. And Mike Tomlin was asked, well, why didn't you play Joey Porter more? Well, and Mike Tomlin was quite correct. He said, yeah, we planned to play him more, but we weren't able to use our dime defense at all. Because if you're playing 3rd and 2, you're not going to put in your dime defense. And so Joey Porter only got 7 snaps. So basically, San Francisco, they played the music and forced the Steelers to dance to their own music.
Let's hope for a recovery Monday night. The loss is hard to take, but a loss to the Clowns is even harder to swallow. So let's get to week 2 predictions here. Thursday night, we had the Eagles and the Vikings. The Vikings are getting 7. The Eagles are at home, and the over-under is 48. Bill.
Well, I'm going to take the Vikings, not because the Vikings are not going to win, but I think it's going to be a closer game than people think. Plus, as was mentioned earlier, the Vikings offense is very good. The Eagles defense has lost a little something from last year as well. While I think they're still the class of the East, I think that, the gap is narrowed. So with 7 points, give me the Vikings. And you said the number for over was 51? No,
48.
Oh, 48. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was 51.
You'll love this week, Bill. There's very few hooks.
Oh, okay. So 48 they're so good. That's probably right on the number again. God, they're good at this. I will take the under, but I'm not very confident about it.
Dave, who you got?
All right. Well, first I'll preface. Last week, by my calculations, I was 9-7 on the point spread picks and 7-9 on the over and unders. And I'm not a good gambler. Good gamblers only announce their winnings, not their losses. I put it out on the table. I'm taking the Eagles in the over. It's a home game, and I think the Eagles. I don't think that they're happy with their week 1 performance.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But Bo, who you got?
Yeah, the Vikings don't have anywhere near the defense that the Patriots do. I'm going to take the Eagles, and Man, that over-under is tough because 48 is probably about right. I'm going to go with the under because I think the Eagles will be able to slow Cousins down in prime time because everyone does.
Don, I'm going to come to you. We got the Eagles and we got the Vikings +7. The over-under is 48. And then Sunday morning, we had the Jaguars and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the visiting team. They're giving up 3, and the over-under is 51.
Okay, I'm going to take the Eagles. I'm going to take the Chiefs.
Do you have the Raiders? Do you have the Raiders there, Don? The Raiders +9 at the Bills, over/under 47.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I was real disappointed in Buffalo's effort last week. I'm going to go gamble. I'm going to say that the Bills rebound. That last week was a fluke, and I'll take the Bills. And if they let me down, I won't pick those some bitches ever again.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
With that being said, Bill, the Chiefs -3, over/under is 51, and the Raiders getting 9 at the Bills, and the over/under is 47.
Yeah, the Chiefs do cover. I still think the under just barely. And then I said that I didn't see that coming, but I saw Josh Allen would regress. As you might remember, I said he regresses to the mean a little bit this year. It takes so much for him to play well. Remember, this is a guy that wasn't that good in college. Up and down in college, flat out bad his rookie year, and then gets to decent his second year in the league. Brian Daboll worked essentially magic to get him to what he became, and it's just difficult to maintain that level of magic. He has a lot of talent, but he has a lot of Superman tendencies that he fights and loses all too often. Remember that game, that third and 14 where he gets 7 yards away from the first down, he dives into the air into 2 defenders?
Yes.
That is who he is at his core. And he fights it, but at some point it comes out, right? It's like someone who got bitten by a werewolf and they work in accounts receivable and everything's fine for a while, and then, oh God, the full moon, right? It's sort of like that. He's coloring within the numbers, he's doing what he's supposed to do, and then at some point, oh, the full moon, oh! So yeah, I just think that the Bills are in a little bit of trouble. They're still gonna be, a playoff team, but I think as a wild card. So yeah, I don't love them. And what was the number? The over/under?
47.
God, these people are good. I keep saying that because they are. Give me the over, but not very confident about it.
Dave?
Okay, I'm taking the Chiefs to cover.
Yep.
And I'll take the under in that game. I think that the Bills are going to win. I think that they have something to prove. But I think it's going to be by less than 9 points. So I'm taking Raiders in the points, and I'm going to say under.
Bo.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with everybody else. I'm going to take the Chiefs to cover. That's a small line. I am going to take the under. I don't know. I just don't love the Jags. So I'm going to take the under on that. And then I'm going to go with, 9 points, really?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Obviously, I'm taking the Raiders because I don't think they cover. The Bills win, obviously. I'm going to go with the under just because I don't think the Raiders are going to score enough points to hit the over.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start out with you here, Bo. The Seahawks are getting 5.5. They're at the Lions. The over/under is 47.5.
Yeah. So sadly, sadly the Hawks are probably not going to cover. Going into a game without your offensive tackles and what we watched, their second string tackles are a monumentous step down. So
you're not a George Fant guy.
I mean, you got to have the ball reach you before the defense to even know if anybody can catch the ball. So I'm going to go with they don't cover and the under. Lions win that game.
The Chargers -3 at the Titans, over under 46. Staying with you, Bo.
Ooh. So this is one where I think we can hit the over. I'm taking the Chargers to cover. The Chargers aren't a bad team, and they can produce a ton of offense. It's their defense that's terrible, and it just works out that the Titans' offense is terrible. So the Titans aren't going to do a lot, and the Chargers are going to hang some points on them.
Okay, staying with you, Bo. The Bears getting 3 at the Bucks. The over-under is 41.5.
So the battle of the mid, got it. I'm going to go, as much as this pains me, I'm going to go with the Bucks. I don't trust a Baker Mayfield-led offense, but I trust that Bears team even less. They failed to do anything in all 3 phases of the game. So I'm going to go with the Bucks cover. And I'm going to go with even though it's a low under, I don't have a lot of faith in either offense. I'm going to go under.
Don, give us your 3 picks here. Don,
Unmute.
I had to find the unmute, but there we go. So I like Tampa Bay over Chicago. Chicago is, like I said, they lack identity. At least Baker Mayfield has an idea of what he's trying to do. So I'll go with Tampa Bay on that one. I'll take Los Angeles over the Titans. Titans have shown me nothing, so I'll go with the Chargers. And what was the other one?
Seahawks.
Ooh, man, Seahawks. They're lacking some linemen, I understand. So I'll go Detroit on that one.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah.
I'll have what Bo's having.
I think
he pretty much nailed
not only the games,
the games, even how the games are likely to play out.
The only
thing I'll differ.
What was the line again
on the
Bears Tampa Bay?
41.5. So it's low.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm squishy on that. Oh, I mean, a tip ball interception, pick 6.
Yeah, but they could both get one of those.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But like that now you're over though. I mean, I think that at least the offenses will, come with 10 to 14 points. You know what? What the hell? Roll the dice and go under as well.
Dave.
All right. Well, for the Seahawks Lions, for Demetrius taking the Lions, they might be the real deal, and so I'm going to take them at home, and I'm going to take the under on that game. If the Seahawks don't have, if they don't have starting tackles, that they might have difficulty scoring. We'll see. In the Chargers Titans, I think, like everybody said, Chargers can score points. And so they lost the game. They just ran out of time is basically what happened. So I'm taking the Chargers to with the -3, and I'm taking the over in that game. And then the Bears Bucks, I'm taking the Bucks, and I'm thinking it's like a 24-17 type game. So I'm going with the under, but I'm sticking with the Bucks.
Okay. Dave, we'll start with you here. The Ratbirds getting 3. Giving 3 to the Bungles, and the over-under is 45.
Okay, so Man, I was surprised at Joe Burrow's performance. Just the way Cleveland just mangled them. And
3.5 points for you fantasy people.
yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bengals, but I'm having the Bengals lose 23-21. So and so with the 23-21, that would be an under.
Okay. The Packers and the Falcons. The Falcons. Now this is a pick'em game.
I'm still on the love boat.
And the over under is 41.
Over. Love boat in the over.
Okay. The Colts giving the Texans 1.5, and the over under is 35.5. Dave.
My head says to take the Colts, but I'm going to go with the Texans and the over. It's a home game for the Texans, and they're going to win some games, and so I'm going to say it's this one, and it'll be the over.
Don, give me your 3 picks right here.
Unmute that. I like the Colts over the Texans, of course. That's a no-brainer. I like Baltimore over Cincinnati.
Give us the over under.
Huh?
The over under.
I'm not good at picking those. I just like picking the winners.
Okay.
I'm not a big gambler unless I'm playing Texas Hold'em. And what was the other one? Frisco?
Packers.
Yeah, I'll take Green Bay. I think Jordan Love can pull off another one. I like Green Bay.
And the last was the Raiders and the Bucks.
I'll go with Baltimore.
Okay. Done. Bo.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the Ravens. 45 is tough considering neither quarterback decided to play football last week. I'm gonna go the under because I think it's gonna be like 44. So yeah, I'm gonna take the Ravens in that. I'm gonna go with the Packers over the Falcons. I'll go the over on that, and then Colts Texans. I'm gonna go with the Colts. That one's a coin flip for me. Obviously, Vegas thought it was too at 1.5. 39.5. Man. I'm going to go over because neither team's defense is amazing. So I think it's going to be just kind of ugly points. So I'm going to go over, but I'm going to take the Colts to cover because, 2 points. I'll take that.
Stroud Richardson. This should be an interesting game.
Terrible. It's going to be terrible. Like, it's going to be really ugly football.
Well, that's what the Chinese say. May you live in interesting times.
Yes, right.
Go ahead, Dave. Your turn. Or did I give you these?
No, I already did those.
Then it must be Bill.
Okay. Colts, and I think the Colts cover. And what was the over-under on that one?
39.5.
39. Oh, give me the over. Good Lord. That's what was after that?
Packers, Falcons. Pick them.
Yeah,
Over under 41.
Oof. I'll go over, and I will take the Packers. And yes, I too am ready for something exciting and new. So yes, I too will board the.
What about the Ratbirds getting three? Giving three, right? No, getting three at the Bungles, 45 over and under.
Yeah, I think the Ravens, and that's once again right about the number. I will go over, but not like it very much. And was there a third game? Oh,
Let's see. You
that
got
was the three.
that was
oh,
the
that was
third game.
Oh, okay, good. Well done, Bill.
Okay. Here's the Sunday 1 o'clock games. Bill, I'm going to start with you. The 49ers giving 8 to the Rams. The over-under is 44.5. And the other game is the Giants giving 5 to the Cardinals, and the over-under is 40.5.
Yeah, I think that the Giants are not good, but they aren't as bad as they looked. I think the Cardinals are as bad as they've looked. And so I will say that the Giants cover at 40.5, if that was the number.
Yep.
I'll go over. And the other game was
The Rams giving 8 to, the 49ers giving 8 to the Rams, and the over-under is 44.5.
49ers are really good, but 8's a lot of points. So I'm going to say that they do not cover. So I guess I'm picking the Rams. Rams don't win, but I don't think they lose by 8. And the over-under was
44.5.
4.5. I'm going to go with the over.
Dave.
All right. So Jets, Cowboys.
No, 49ers, Rams, and Giants.
Oh, I'm sorry. 49ers, Rams. The 49ers are the real deal. They absolutely convinced me the other day. That's a strong team. I think that they're going to win, but I'm taking the Rams in the 8 points, and I'll take the over in that game. I see it like 49ers winning like 35-30, something like that. But I'm gonna take the Rams in the points and the over.
Guess I'm the only one taking the 49ers, but let's see that. No, Bo.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna take the Niners to cover. I got them winning by 10. I don't think they're. Unless they get some injuries, I think they are going to be a far superior team. And then 44.5, I'll take the over on that. And then Giants, Cards, I will take the Giants because there's no way they're as bad as the absolute beatdown they took earlier this week. And then and the Cards are every bit as bad as they look. So I have them to cover the 5 points. Over under 40. I think it'll be over and probably mostly Giants.
Okay, let's see. Don, I'm going to come to you. I want those two, and then I want the two.
Well, I didn't give my Giants Cardinals one. I'll do that very fast. I'm taking the Cardinals and the under.
And the under.
Wow,
Okay.
you're gonna have the Cards beat them?
Oh, man.
That's like 20-17. Giants.
Oh, okay. I was like, did you have them winning outright? Because that is amazing.
No, I
I'm
don't
being
think
cute.
so. Don, I want those two, and then we're going to the Jets are playing the Cowboys. They're getting 9.5. The over-under is 40, and the Commanders are getting 3.5, are giving 3.5 at the Broncos, and the over-under is 39.
All right, so I'm going to take the Cowboys, and then I'm going to I'm definitely going to, take Cowboys. I'm going to take the Giants over Arizona. I think Arizona is terrible. And what was the other one?
49ers.
49ers all the way.
Commanders.
Just to be loyal to the NFC, I go to Commanders despite my better judgment.
Bill.
And the
games are you said Cowboys and Jets. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
The Cowboys
win, and the
line was how many?
9.5.
The Jets have a really good defense too, so I'm going to say no. That's too many points. Probably not way too many, just barely too many. And the over/under was
40.
It's probably about right again. I'm gonna go over and be really nervous about it. And what was the other game?
Commanders Broncos.
Oh, okay. The line was
Commanders are getting 3.5.
okay.
Over under 39.
Okay, well I'll take the over. That helps me a little. She's getting 3.5. I'll go Washington, just barely.
Dave.
All right. I'm going to be a little counterintuitive. I think Donnie might have to mute.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm going to take the Jets. I see the Cowboys winning 24-17, but 9.5 points. And I'm taking the over because the Cowboys already showed that they can score 40. And maybe they'll do it in this game. But the Jets I thought that their defense played very well. In the other game, I'm taking, again, I'm being cute. I'm saying that the Broncos will win 24-21. So I'm taking the Commanders in points, and I'm taking the over by just 1. So those are my two.
Bo.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Cowboys by 10 because that offensive line in front of Wilson isn't awesome. And then Wilson compounds that by making bad decisions. So as good as that defense is, I don't think they can hold with them. Plus, it's football in September. It's not football in December. So Dallas still knows how to play football. So we'll go Cowboys cover, and we'll still take the over though. And then Commanders Broncos 3.5. I don't love that line, but I will take. I'll take the Broncos to still cover, but the over also. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, we got one more game left on the Sunday night, and then unusual. Hope everybody got picture-in-picture. Monday night, we got one game starts at 4:15, the other starts at 5:15. So, Don, I'm going to get your scores and your final thoughts. So we'll start with the Sunday night game. The Fins giving 2.5 to the Patriots. The over/under is 46.5. The first Monday night game, the Saints are giving the Panthers 3.5. The over/under is 40. And in the Twilight game, the Clowns playing the Steelers. The Clowns are giving the Steelers 2. And the over/under is 40.5.
All right, I'm going to go New Orleans, and I'm going to go Cleveland.
Okay, what about Then
And what?
the
Dolphins.
Fins and Patriots.
I'm going Patriots on that one. I think that might be one of the better games of the week, though. So my final thoughts. Of course, Texas beat Alabama. I almost said Oklahoma. Beat Alabama. Everything I understand is that the Alabama fans were classy and all that, except for a group that decided to be kind of cool to hurl racial epithets at the Texas players or families. It's uncalled for. Don't do that. Alabama's a class institution. Nick Saban's a class coach. It's a shame that a handful of guys can go out and put a black eye on the Alabama Crimson Tide. But so hopefully we don't have that happen anymore when Texas enters the SEC. That's my final thoughts.
Bill, 3 games and your final thought.
Okay, so it was who's left? Let's see.
Dolphins, Pats.
Okay. Oh, that should be good. Those teams know each other extremely well, obviously. Belichick is so good at taking away your favorite thing, your best thing. So Tyreek Hill is going to be, in witness protection, basically, but they've got other guys. And so, yeah, I still like the Dolphins. What's the line on that game?
Dolphins get 2.5, and the over/under is 46.5.
Ugh, 2.5. Okay. But yeah, so yeah, give me the Dolphins and the over.
Saints Panthers over under is 40. Saints getting given 3.5.
I will go with the Saints to cover, and I will go with over.
And Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland and
Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh. Duh, I know that. And the line on that one is
-2. The -2. The Steelers are getting 2 points at home.
getting 2 points at home, right? Which
Over
tells
under
you.
40.5.
Oh, okay. I'll go under, and I'll go.
Is it 48 or 40? I thought it was
40.5, 40.5.
40.5. Yeah.
Oh. Well, then I'll go over. Yeah, I'll go over just barely, and I got to pick the Browns as much as it pains me to say.
I heard you whisper the Browns. You didn't say it out loud.
I don't feel good about it, but I'm taking a wait and see attitude. But the Browns showed me more so far.
Final thoughts.
So on this day in 1953, Robert Lee Price, Bob Trice, who began his professional career as a baseball player with the champions of the Negro Leagues, the Kansas City Monarchs, and then his contract was purchased by the Philadelphia Athletics. He had a terrific season with their International League team, the Ottawa A's, sort of like Jackie Robinson had that great year with Montreal before he got called up to the majors, and didn't turn out quite the same way for Robert Lee Trice, but he was a good pitcher and had a couple of good years. Had one sort of stellar outing in particular when he was pitching against a powerhouse Yankees team and had a 9-run shutout. But he had an okay career. But what he did was he was another one of those links in that chain to pull down the false idol of racial superiority that baseball had erected over the 60 plus years prior to him entering the league. And we pay a lot of attention to Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. Why? Because we should. Incredibly important person, one of our nation's greatest all-around athletes. I mean, in addition to being a 4-sport superstar in both college, high school and college, at one time he basically watched someone play tennis, spent a summer playing tennis, and then won the colored tennis state championship for the state of California. I mean, but I'll talk about Jackie some other time. But without having that kind of career, but who does? Still, there was a very important thing that Robert Lee Trice did by integrating the Philadelphia and then later Kansas City A's. And he played with them during their transition from Philadelphia to Kansas City. He was a pitcher whose best years were in the Negro Leagues, which often happened, but by holding up in a very challenging and lonely environment where he couldn't stay in the same team hotels and all the other things you've already heard about, but he was always extremely dignified, handled all of this with a plum and a smile. But I can assure you that the stress of it took years off his life. He died young. I think he was 62 when he died. And I'm sure at least part of that can be attributed to what he went through, having to take it, having to put up with, the slings, the arrows, the most horrible kinds of things you can imagine. We just talked, Don talked about the Alabama-Texas game. That isn't over yet, right? We still are dealing with some of those things, but imagine what he dealt with, 70 years ago on this very day in Connie Mack Stadium when he became the first Black player in the athletics history. And that is my final thought.
Yes, a lot of different pioneers, some whose names have been forgotten. Whoa.
All right. So, Fins, Pats. I am going to take the Dolphins to cover and the over. Let's see. We got Saints, Panthers. I'm going to take the Saints and the over. And then Monday night, part 2, with the Browns and Steelers. I'm going to take the Browns to cover because -2 is laughable. And then the over. I don't think that the Browns are going to be as bad as they were, and I don't think the Steelers are going to be as bad as they were. So, I'm going to go with the Browns win and the over. Yep. And then I guess final thoughts. I'm going to stem off of the interview we started this show with and say, I remember as a kid, you could always tell where all your friends were by the pile of bikes outside. And I hope at some point we can return to the days where kids play with this thing called outside again.
Nice.
Yeah, I do want to continue our discussion with her at some time. I'll let you guys kind of pick the date for that. Before you get to your final thoughts there, Dave, I'm thinking in a division as tough as ours, if you're starting out 0-2, and I'm talking about both the Bengals as well as the Steelers, I think it's going to be kind of hard to catch up. But your final thoughts, Dave, after you give us your scores.
All right. So first of all, I think that these week 2 matchups are there's a lot of interesting matchups here based on the week 1 results. But I'm going to take the Fins in the under in that game. I'm going to take the Saints in the over. And now in the Pittsburgh game, the thing that I'll mention here is Chuck Noll's worst home opening defeat was 51-0 to the Cleveland Browns in 1989. Bill Cowher's worst home opening defeat was 37-0 to the Dallas Cowboys in 1997. The thing that I would point out in that Noll team, then they lost the next week. They were creamed by Cincinnati. Both of those teams made the playoffs. Not saying that that's going to happen this year with the Steelers, but if it did, wouldn't that be something if Mike Tomlin's worst home opening loss, what a trifecta that would be. if all three of those teams made the playoffs, the 89, the 97, and the 2023 Steelers. So, but saying all that, I have the Steelers losing 27-10. The Cleveland defense was the real deal. They were putting Myles Garrett. I talked to a friend of mine over in Cleveland this morning. He said they were putting Myles Garrett all over the place, including linebacker for a couple snaps. So they're moving him all over the place. They're the real deal. I see them pounding the Steelers 27-10 simply because the Steelers offense just didn't show me anything. And you got a strong, stout Cleveland defense. I hope that I'm wrong. I'm going to be at the game I'm always there till the final whistle. We'll see what happens. I
want to see the team that you think is going to score 10 points, but 3 field goals maybe, but go ahead.
All right. So the other day I got an invitation to the 50th anniversary of Roberto Clemente's induction into the Hall of Fame up in Pittsburgh. And this is it was out of the blue. It was from a high school classmate of mine that I hadn't heard from for a while. But he knew that I was a Pittsburgh fan and thought of me. I can't go, but my brother and his wife are attending. The only the closest interaction I ever had to Roberto Clemente, although I adored him, were flowers. And what happened is in the 1960s, one of my mother's good friends, Doris Cepek, was a Puerto Rican. There was a very small Latin American community in Pittsburgh. At the time, they were called Spanish Americans, if you can believe that. But Roberto Clemente, being a fellow Puerto Rican, had sent a bouquet of flowers to her funeral. And I remember that as a little kid in the 60s, never forgot it. Now, Roberto Clemente going into the Hall of Fame, 15-time All-Star, 4-time batting champion, World Series MVP, 12-time Golden Glove winner. Just his field exploits, what he did with the bat and the glove alone, I think qualified him. But he was actually waived. There's normally a waiting period before you can go in. He went in 1 year after his last season. And the reason for that, and many people are aware of the story, you had the earthquake in Managua, Nicaragua, where my father was born, and it devastated the city. Roberto Clemente, made arrangements for relief supplies to be flown into Managua. But what happened is the first 3 shipments that went in, the government was grabbing that, and it wasn't getting out to the victims of the thing. There was a lot of corruption in the government at the time. So Roberto Clemente, he just wasn't going to throw money. And hey, I'm the big guy. I've given my money. He personally decided I'm going to escort the 4th flight in. And unfortunately, on December 31st, 1972, the airplane took off in a rainstorm and disappeared. And Roberto Clemente's body was never found. But here is a man that lived by deed. And I think I really, really admire it. The thing that I would add is that what Pittsburghers all know about Roberto Clemente, and I even have his jersey on whenever I go to Pirate games. But Pittsburgh also really celebrates the Immaculate Reception. What they don't put together is the link between the two. The earthquake in Managua occurred on December 23rd, 1972, the same day as the Immaculate Reception. Just over a week later, Pittsburgh lost, and the world lost Roberto Clemente. And to me, that's how I measure when Pittsburgh went from being a baseball town to a football town, that tragedy. They held on for a while, and they won another World Series in '79. But that really was a transitional stage. So that's my final thoughts. And Go Roberta.
Yes. What a lot of people also don't know about him is that he was a member of the Marine Corps Reserves.
Correct.
All right, guys.
Came up in the Dodgers organization.
Yeah, great show as always. Thank our guest, Miss Montgomery, and looking forward to having some more guests on the show as well. So I'll keep you guys informed, and thank you so much for your participation. And I'll see everybody next week.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
James.
See y'all later.